Chapter 1106. Seeing that Catherine had left, the Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection did not give chase. One of his plans was to get the 7 emotions swords to attract all of her attention. The Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection took a step forward and once again arrived before the tower. With a tearing motion with both hands, the dense particle shield, which had already been ravaged and could not withstand the heavy burden, was torn apart. Then, with a single thought from the Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection, countless golden hand imprints appeared in void space. They grabbed the tower and slowly tore it apart, revealing its internal structure. Zixing and the Snake King watched as the outer shell of the tower was torn apart, revealing itself under the sunlight. Strong gales blew over, and the two of them were exposed to the high-energy rays shot out from the white hole. Their heads and bodies showed signs of bleeding, shattering, and collapsing. The surrounding metal walls and equipment also showed varying degrees of damage. However, they no longer had the energy to care about these. Their gazes were fixed in the direction of the sky. The towering golden giant walked over, shrinking rapidly with each step it took. When it arrived at the hall they were in, it had already shrunk to the size of Fang Xingjian, who was over 2 meters tall. Zixing blurted out, "You're Fang Xingjian?" "Oh." Seeing the two of them appear, Fang Xingjian's gaze swept out slightly. Combining it with the information he had received earlier, he was able to deduce most of what had happened. Catherine attacked Earth in order to get me to seek revenge for the Divine Emperor? "That's right," Zixing said, her face flushed red. "I'm sorry, but there's no way for us to help her look for you." "It's fine. She's strong enough to suppress the two of you. There's nothing wrong with you listening to her," the Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection said with a wave of his hand. As the Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection spoke, he waved his hand, and the duo's heads were reattached to their bodies. Simultaneously, a series of crackling sounds rang out around their bodies, and the restrictions on them were all removed. The moment their Tier 5 divine level powers were recovered, their auras kept on rising. Their injuries were all healed, and they once again turned from flesh and blood into conjured physiques. However, although they had recovered their powers, the two of them did not dare to be impudent before the Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection. They had witnessed the entire battle between Fang Xingjian and the god Exterminating Mech. The god Exterminating Mech that could annihilate all the forces on their planet was able to hold its own against Fang Xingjian. Fang Xingjian's strength was simply unfathomable. Zixing could not help but ask, "Xingjian, could it be that your current realm is already— I've just attained Tier 7 of the divine level." Fang Xingjian did not explain the difference between the projection and the real body. He just casually answered and then asked, "Where is my Earth?" Hearing that Fang Xingjian had already attained a breakthrough to Tier 7 of the divine level, Zixing and the Snake King exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with astonishment. What kind of concept was Tier 7 of the divine level? Those at Tier 6 of the divine level were already the dominators of the universe, and those at Tier 7 of the divine level were even legends amongst legends. Each of them had the power to capture the stars and the moon, as well as to annihilate the world. They had a battle prowess that could truly, single-handedly destroy an entire world. Hearing this, the duo's expressions became even more respectful. They treated Fang Xingjian as if he was a senior from their sect. The Snake King pointed to the several thousand spheres that kept on floating and moving about on the wall. Clearly, each of them was a planet. Fang Xingjian had also noticed the spheres a long time ago. However, when he confirmed it, he was still a little surprised. To think that she took away so many planets? The Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection casually took a metal sphere and pierced it with his martial will. He slowly scanned through the captured planets and could not help but exclaim in admiration. This technique of capturing a planet into a palm-sized sphere is really unbelievable. Compared to this technique, Catherine's battle prowess seems to be a little low. This probably isn't a technique that she developed herself. The Golden Marshal will scan through them, and he had a rough understanding of the planets in the several thousand metal spheres. Feng Xingjian waved his hand, and the metal sphere that contained earth appeared in his hand. Then it disappeared, having been sent into the high-dimensional sword realm. Feng Xingjian looked at the remaining several thousand planets. Some of them were civilized planets like Earth, while some were large and empty resource planets. There were also over 100 stars among them. It could be said that these several thousand planets were an astonishing amount of wealth. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was equivalent to several 10,000 miracle worlds added together. Feng Xingjian gave it some thought and decided to send all of them into the high-dimensional sword realm at one go. He then turned to look at Zi Xing and the Snake King, asking, "What do you guys plan on doing next?" The two of them exchanged a glance and said, "Big Brother Feng, our planet has been destroyed and our civilization has disappeared. Right now, we're just wandering ghosts. Please take us in." Feng Xingjian nodded. "Then you guys can stay in my sword realm for now. I'll send you guys off after things here are settled." Feng Xingjian waved his right hand, and golden light shone on their bodies. Zi Xing and the Snake King did not put up any resistance and were sent into the high-dimensional sword realm by Feng Xingjian. As they did not have high-dimensional sensory abilities, the two of them instantly sank into a state where their five senses were sealed off. They could not even sense time and space, and it was as if they had turned into people in a vegetative state. After doing all these, the royal heavenly great art martial art projection probed downward and also went deep into the metal land. The Silver Mage King continued to probe downward at rapid speed. As the attacks from the outside world intensified, the defenses he faced kept on decreasing. Very soon, he was about to arrive before one of the Morning Star's perpetual motion machines. However, at that moment, a silver light flashed, and the silver-haired young man who had been observing the battlefield on the beach earlier appeared before the Silver Mage King. At the instant the young man appeared, the Silver Mage King punched out without any hesitation. Everything within a range of 1,000 meters instantly fell into a standstill, and the entire world seemed to have turned into black and white. The silver-haired young man also came to a standstill in midair, not moving at all. However, just as the Silver Mage King's punch, which caused time to come to a standstill, was about to imprint onto the silver-haired young man's body, a silver palm appeared from the young man's chest and clashed fiercely with the Silver Mage King's power. With an explosive bang, the duo's fist force struck out with the effects of nuclear fusion and plasma, causing the surrounding metal armor layers to become unrecognizable, distorting and rolling back. The two of them were evenly matched with this punch. The Silver Mage King looked at the young man's chest and slowly retracted his palm. He frowned and said, "You're also a mage?" In the exchange earlier, the Silver Mage King had sensed the silver demonic god's powers. The silver-haired young man smiled and said, "You're talking about the demonic god's powers, right? How should I put it?" The silver-haired young man scratched his chin and said, "I'm the Saint Association's inspector, Wei Jin. I know what you want to do next, but this will destroy the entire Morning Star. For the sake of the hundreds of millions of people on it, I hope that you can temporarily restrain your battle intent and fury. Trust me, we're on the same side." Although the Silver Mage King was righteous, he did not lack killing means. He looked at the young man and said, "I'm only going to destroy this spaceship's propulsion system. As for the people living on it, our people will naturally take over. If you don't give way, then don't blame me for killing you." Chapter 11:07. How troublesome. The silver-haired young man shook his head helplessly. "Actually, I've already grasped the situation here. Even if you guys hadn't come, we would have dealt with it after some time." As he spoke, a human figure that was completely formed from a silver substance that seemed like liquid metal slowly appeared behind the young man, floating quietly behind him. "Can you sense it? Our powers are the same." The silver-haired young man looked at the Silver Mage King and said, "Join us. Everyone in the Saint Association is our compatriot. The dreams we hold in our hearts are the same as yours." The Silver Mage King frowned. The demonic god's powers could not be deceived. Although the method of application was different, The silver demonic god's powers on the other party were so thick that they were almost the same as his. From this point, it could be seen that the other party was at least a righteous person. Continue. On Fang Xingjian's side, the Heart Sword Path martial art projection was still controlling the feelings of terror in the group consciousness, allowing the 9 lives helix to maintain its state of entering deep into the group consciousness. On the other hand, the Celestial Eradication, Sword Technique martial art projection, and the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection performed spatial translocation and kept on heading deeper into the underground core. Due to the Silver Mage King being obstructed, Fang Xingjian was the first to arrive at the location of an engine. There were clearly over 10,000 engines in the Morning Star's engine array, and the one before Fang Xingjian was just one of them. Despite this, Fang Xingjian revealed a hint of astonishment as he looked at the engine that was like a magical instrument. It was a resplendent gemstone that was wrapped up by several hundred layers of metal tracks. Countless light spots rose up from the tracks and then flowed into the gemstone in the center of the tracks. It was like the most resplendent pearl in the entire history of science. The principles, structure, and effects were unknown. The perpetual motion machine before him was a technology that completely surpassed the level of technology that Fang Xingjian had grasped. Although Fang Xingjian did not know the principles behind this perpetual motion machine, he managed to figure out its energy source from the information that Erbian had given him. The entire Morning Star was selecting talents based on spiritual energy. The stronger the talent, the more privileges they would receive. The reason for this was that the entire Morning Star's power source came from that so-called spiritual energy. The psionic energy was collected, entered the perpetual motion machine, and released as an extremely efficient energy source. On average, the spiritual energy provided by an ordinary adult man, after being converted by a perpetual motion machine, could supply the electricity of a modern city in the 21st century for a year. The first energy discovered by humans was the flame, followed by the steam engine, followed by the internal combustion engine, then nuclear fusion, antimatter, and vacuum zero-point energy. Every step forward was hundreds or thousands of times more efficient. Fang Xingjian was able to understand the principles behind these primitive or sci-fi sources of energy. However, the psionic energy in front of him was clearly an energy source that far surpassed nuclear fusion, antimatter, and vacuum zero-point energy. Amazing. I'm afraid Catherine didn't master this energy method herself. As the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection sighed, the golden light from his martial will swept out toward the front, keeping the engine into the high-dimensional sword realm. Both the Celestial Eradication, Sword Technique martial art projection, and the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection started to collect the engines one after another. The other God Massacre Team, fighter aircrafts, and other military forces on Morning Star were all trying their best to stop the sword light from descending. Many fighter aircrafts smashed into the sword light in a suicidal manner, like moths flying into a flame. It was as if densely packed black spots were flashing on the sword light. Damn it, why isn't he stopping? The 2 swords in the ponytailed young lady's hands had been completely destroyed, but her movements did not stop. She held 2 streams of sword light in her hands and kept slashing toward the sword light under her feet. However, there was no effect at all. Not only were there no effects, but as the 7 emotions swords continued to vaporize and slash the Morning Star, endless explosions occurred. This world-splitting canyon had turned into a stretch of hell. Under the high temperature and high pressure, the ponytailed young lady's body started to deform slightly and melt. Not only would she not be able to stop the sword light, but it would also be hard for her to survive. Fang Xingjian then turned to look at the other God Massacre Team's warriors in the surroundings. Their conditions were not much different from the ponytailed young ladies. These top-notch warriors who had fought in countless galaxies, destroyed countless civilizations, and massacred countless races were now so powerless before this stream of sword light. The sword light had already penetrated several hundred kilometers into the land. The surroundings were pitch black and cold, and the metal barrier that was several hundred kilometers away could not be seen at all. It was as if they had been dragged into an abyss and kept on sinking. Is it over? Is our world going to be destroyed just like that? The ponytailed young lady lowered her head and looked at the sword light that kept on sinking. Her eyes were gradually filled with despair. Just then, a loud sound rang out from the depths of the Morning Star. Amidst the tremors that affected the entire spaceship, countless defensive structures were torn apart, and hundreds or thousands of civilians were blown into the sky. On the ground, the prince frowned and looked toward the depths of the ground. Just as everyone on the Morning Star was feeling puzzled by this intense tremor, another boom rang out from the depths of the ground. It was a majestic and far-reaching sound, as if a planet's core had been forcefully torn apart. An even more terrifying tremor rang out, and the entire Morning Star seemed to have experienced a magnitude 10 earthquake. Right now, the defensive structures seemed to have turned into many coffins. Under the influence of the intense tremors, countless defensive structures were sent flying out and landed in the universe's vacuum. With this series of continuous tremors, the entire Morning Star started to deform. The Morning Star's size far surpassed that of Earth's, almost 10 times or more. With it starting to deform, it was a world-shaking event. The ground was torn apart, and countless cities were sent flying into the sky. Many pieces of metal land were like sets of armor, breaking off from the Morning Star and floating in the universe. Simultaneously, the atmosphere completely collapsed and dissipated, turning into the universe's vacuum environment. As the speed of the deforming was extremely fast, under this intense acceleration, countless metal buildings, fighter aircrafts, and defensive structures were sent flying into the sky at a speed that was over 10 times that of supersonic speed. Countless people died in this series of changes. It could be said to be the end of the world. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, over half of the Morning Star's metal armor was removed. All of the cities that the people lived in were stripped away, and even the parts that the Seven Emotions sword had slashed off also turned into many pieces of metal land that floated into the sky. The remaining parts, or rather, the true parts of the Morning Star, turned into an extremely huge white humanoid mecha that stood proudly in void space. It stretched out its arms, opened its mouth, and let out a soundless bellow. This invasion by Fang Xingjian's group of 4 could be said to have destroyed the moon and sunk the stars, destroyed the continents, and destroyed the world. However, in the end, the one who killed the most people and truly destroyed the entire world was Catherine, whom they had always trusted. They found this hard to accept. On the other side, at the core of the huge robot, Catherine controlled the god exterminating mech and sat there. Her entire body was covered in layers of information fluid that could help her transmit information and control the entire huge robot. Apart from that, there was also an artificial intelligence monitoring the entire robot's every move, assisting Catherine's operation. A bunch of bastards. Catherine naturally knew what kind of terrifying disaster the Morning Star's full-powered transformation would cause. However, in the situation earlier, if she had not transformed and retaliated, the entire Morning Star would probably have become a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. It would have been destroyed before it could even retaliate. The countless cities on this spaceship, the population of hundreds of millions, and the various authority systems had created the spiritual ability production system. She had put in a lot of effort, but now it was gone just like that. This made Catherine so embarrassed and furious that she wanted to go crazy. Just then, the artificial intelligence's voice rang out. Master, traces of Fang Xingjian have been discovered in the spaceship. Use quantum transmission to shake him off. As she spoke, the huge robot abruptly turned into a faint phantom image and dissipated. At the next moment, it appeared several 10 million kilometers away. Regardless of whether it was the activation speed or the range it could control, they clearly far surpassed spatial translocation. With her quantum transmission this time around, Fang Xingjian's celestial eradication, sword technique martial art projection, and royal heavenly great art martial art projection were both left where they were. It was as if they had been cleared out from the robot's interior. A transmission of several 10 million kilometers had completely surpassed the range that ordinary observation means could detect. After all, it would take a few minutes for the light rays and electromagnetic waves to be transmitted over from there for the people here to be able to see Catherine. However, Urbian's eyes narrowed, and he immediately made a judgment. It's quantum transmission. With such means, as long as the coordinates are confirmed, it'll only take an instant for her to cross several galaxies or several million light years. Hearing that, Fang Xingzhan's gaze turned cold. Then we'll have to end the battle quickly. If we let her escape, there'll be endless trouble in the future. Then what should we do? Upon hearing that a single quantum transmission could cross a distance of several million light years, even the prince frowned deeply. If she was willing to, there probably wouldn't be many means to kill a target who possessed such a mobile ability. However, what they did not know was that the morning star that Catherine was controlling had yet to reach the level of being able to cross several million light years. Due to its size and the imperfections of the quantum transmission equipment, her highest transmission distance was about 50 million kilometers. As the few of them discussed, Catherine took action once again. The huge robot clenched its fists tightly. There were no plasma cannons, high-energy laser cannons, or black hole missiles. She merely clenched her fist, which was the size of the North American continent, and an extremely strong gravitational field was generated in her palm. Then she punched out across space. The fist turned into a phantom image and dissipated. Then it appeared above the prince's head. This punch broke through a distance of several 10 million kilometers, smashing fiercely toward the prince's location. Although it was done through quantum transmission, it was still considered a superluminal attack to be able to cross a distance of several 10 million kilometers in an instant. The speed of light was only 300,000 kilometers per second. For a distance of several tens of millions of kilometers, even light would need 1 to 2 minutes to transmit over. This meant that before the few divine-level experts noticed and saw Catherine throwing out this punch, the attack would have already arrived. Moreover, the super-gravitational space in the center of the fist had almost reached the critical value of forming a black hole. However, it did not form a black hole. Instead, it turned into pure violence. Bang! There were no sound waves transmitted in vacuum, but the people who saw this scene could still imagine what kind of loud sound would be produced when the two attacks collided. The prince felt as if he had been struck fiercely by a sun that was 100 times that of supersonic speed. His consciousness instantly sank into a state of blankness, and it was as if his entire brain and consciousness had been completely shattered. With just a single attack, the golden giant that the prince had turned into was destroyed by this punch that contained the super-gravitational space. The golden will dissipated in the flames like a star that had been extinguished. Despite being a Tier 7 divine-level expert who could single-handedly destroy a world, the prince was seriously injured by a single punch. He could not even gather his martial will. Spread out. Fang Xingzhan's gaze narrowed. The other party is able to attack at superluminal speed through quantum transmission. Before we can detect his attack, he'll be able to hit us. As they spoke, the 3 divine-level experts simultaneously used spatial translocation to retreat. The prince turned into endless light fog, dissipating in vacuum space. It was as if he would not be able to gather his form within a short period of time. Chapter 1109. However, just as the few of them were retreating, another 2 punches descended from the sky. The attacks came from several 10 million kilometers away, making it impossible for them to detect them in advance. They only realized it when the attacks hit, but it was already too late. Amidst the surging fist force, Fang Xingzhan's royal heavenly great art martial art projection and celestial eradication sword technique martial art projection were also crushed. Looking at the few people who were unable to retaliate under her attacks, Catherine smiled coldly. Too weak. The Silver Mage King expanded the fog virtual image that he had turned into to the size of Earth. On one hand, he could use it to save the commoners. On the other hand, with such a size, even if he were to be attacked by Catherine, he would only lose a portion of his martial will that came into contact with her. Despite this, the Silver Mage King's situation was not good with Catherine's continuous attacks within a short 2 minutes. Several million people had died under the Silver Mage King's punches. Are you guys not done yet? From the beginning to the end, the only ones who had not suffered any losses were Feng Xingjian and Erbian, whose true forms were in the high-dimensional space-time. Hearing the Silver Mage King's question, Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed abruptly. Within 2 minutes, he finally detected Catherine's location that was 50 million kilometers away. Almost at the same instant that he discovered it, Erbian also detected it. We'll be able to instantly cross a distance of several 10,000 kilometers with ordinary three-dimensional space-time attacks. By the time we get to Catherine, she'll have dodged it, Erbian said. Right now, the only solution is to use high-dimensional attacks. In the high-dimensional space-time, the distance in the three-dimensional space-time is meaningless. In the high-dimensional sword realm, the seven emotions sword rose high up. If the entire stream of sword cheese were to come to the three-dimensional physical world, they would discover that it had turned into a demonic deep red color. Due to the morning star's transformation, the number of survivors on the spaceship decreased rapidly. However, due to this sudden calamity, the remaining survivors sank into an unprecedented state of terror. Countless Heart Sword Path martial art projections walked among the crowd, sensing the terror that was so intense that it seemed as if it was going to take material form. At this moment, the 9 Lives Helix pierced into the deepest part of the group consciousness, and the timelines of countless worlds' birth and death turned into a material form. At this moment, the seven emotions sword was unprecedentedly powerful, gathering the entropy of the birth and death of countless worlds. Even Feng Xingjian himself could not predict its destructive power. This sword attack is enough to completely destroy the Morning Star, but I can't guarantee that it will definitely hit its target, Feng Xingjian said. I promise. As Erbian spoke, one of his hands also seemed to have grabbed onto the sword cheese. The two of them held onto the beautiful seven emotions sword and slashed out fiercely toward Catherine in the high-dimensional space-time. Of course, all of this was the understanding of the two in the high-dimensional perception. In fact, in the high-dimensional space-time, they did not make any sword-wielding movements. Everything was abstract. At the next moment, a bewitching red light suddenly appeared in the three-dimensional space-time, piercing the Morning Star's body. Unknown high-energy attack detected. Chest to annihilation engine heavily damaged. Recommended to use quantum transmission to evade the attack. What? Hearing the alarm from the artificial intelligence, Catherine was slightly stunned. How did they attack me? Why didn't I sense it? Could it be that they can also perform quantum transmission attacks? Catherine did not have time to make guesses. She immediately activated quantum transmission and once again appeared 50 million kilometers away with a flash. However, this time around, that bewitching crimson red sword light appeared together with her. It was like a bolt of lightning that traversed across the world, piercing onto the chest annihilation engine on the robot's chest. It kept on releasing destructive energy. What's going on? Why didn't I shake off this attack? Catherine carried out another 3 quantum transmissions in astonishment. However, no matter how she moved, the seven emotions sword followed closely behind. As the 3 quantum transmissions passed, over half of the matter on the Morning Star's chest had been vaporized by the energy. The entire huge robot's power output was reduced by a quarter. What kind of joke is this? Catherine was so enraged that she wanted to go crazy. This Morning Star could be said to be her entire worth. It was the ultimate weapon that she had worked hard for over 1,000 years to obtain. If this spaceship were to be destroyed, the agony she would feel would not even be comparable to the death of 100 divine emperors. However, Catherine continued to attack this bewitching crimson red sword light. However, regardless of whether it was the supergravitational field, high-energy rays, or photon attacks, none of them were able to wipe out this stream of sword light. This bewitching crimson red sword light was like an insurmountable peak. Any attacks that came before it would be like an ant trying to shake a tree. At the next moment, the huge robot immediately performed a few consecutive quantum transmissions and once again got close to where the prince and the others were. It crossed a distance of 10 million kilometers and launched another attack. Piercing white light flashed on the morning star's wrist. Two spheres that contained stars were slowly released. Once they were completely activated, it would be a punch that could be compared to a star's explosion. This was a stellar impact device that had been specially created to complement the explosive prowess of a star. Each time it was activated, it would deplete a star. The high-energy rays and high-temperature attacks produced by such an attack would be transmitted out at light speed. Within a second, they would incinerate a planet the size of Earth. Then, within a few months, they would incinerate an entire star system into ashes. Even the rays and meteors that were transmitted out would be continuously observed by the entire star system within several 10,000 years. Let alone Feng Xingjian, even Erbian would not be able to match up to such a pure wide-area attack prowess. This was clearly another weapon that far surpassed Catherine's current technology. No one knew where she had gotten it from. Simultaneously, Catherine's voice spread out across the vast star field in the surroundings through quantum transmissions. Stop your attacks immediately. Otherwise, I'll kill all the living creatures in this stretch of the starry sky. Her voice sounded extremely exasperated and furious. It was because within this short period of time, the seven emotions sword had kept on sliding down, stirring the robot's chest and stomach into many pieces of metal fragments. Large areas of explosions kept on occurring, and all sorts of reaction furnaces and spiritual ability engines kept on losing their effects. This caused the entire Morning Star's power output to decrease rapidly, and it also caused the assets that Catherine had accumulated to evaporate continuously. It was even more unbearable for her than having her flesh cut off. Sensing the changes in the other party's wrist, Feng Xingjian also gasped in admiration. For a wide-area attack of this degree, this Morning Star's destructive prowess in the material world has already reached the pinnacle. Erbian nodded. Doing this in the material world is already the limit of its capabilities. It's meaningless to have more destructive prowess. After all, most of the universe is just a vacuum. Being able to accurately destroy many planets is the most cost-effective method. As they spoke, they saw that the prince, the Silver Mage King, a large number of commoners, the Metal Land, and even the God Massacre team had all disappeared into void space. Feng Xingjian looked at the sphere in his hand and said, "Thankfully, we've collected many of these planet-capturing devices previously. We can use them to relocate them now." When they were fighting against Catherine, they had already made preparations for Catherine to attack the prince and the others. Therefore, they had used the planet-capturing devices to store everyone in the starry sky in one go. Everyone was placed into the planet-capturing devices and then sent into Feng Xingjian's high-dimensional world, causing Catherine to lose her target. Looking at the empty starry sky, Catherine bellowed furiously. The stellar impact device on her wrist unleashed a destructive prowess that was comparable to a supernova explosion. A spot of light flashed in the dark starry sky. At the next moment, it lit up the endless darkness, turning all matter that came into contact with it into the most basic microscopic particles. It also engulfed the entire Morning Star completely. Chapter 11:10. Amidst the great explosion, the seven emotions sword did not seem to be affected at all. However, the red light it emitted became increasingly demonic, shattering the Morning Star's body inch by inch. Catherine looked at the monitor situation, and her countenance turned increasingly pale. Feng Xingjian, stop it. Do you know the value of this spaceship? Lunatics. You lunatics. You don't know what you've destroyed. Damn it. I won't let you off. Someone will take revenge for me. Ha 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 ha. Everyone will die. Everyone will die. No one will be able to escape the game's ending. I'll be waiting for you guys down there. Amidst crazy laughter, Catherine's body was also completely engulfed by the red sword light. Then there was a great explosion that was comparable to a supernova explosion. The piercing white light lasted for a total of 12 hours, and the entire starry sky space-time was in a mess. When Feng Xingjian, Erbian, Prince, and the Silver Mage King once again stepped into the three-dimensional physical world, there was nothing else here other than darkness. It's a pity. There are too many secrets in this morning star that are worth our research, but now, all of them are gone. Urbian shook his head, his eyes filled with pity. Maybe. The Silver Mage King nodded. His eyes were deep like hell, seeming to emit an unfathomable glow. At the very least, we've obtained a few thousand planets and a population of over 10 billion. Prince's gaze turned scorching hot. If we make good use of these resources, our strength can increase by several times. That's right. Feng Xingjian nodded and spat out the planet-capturing devices that contained a few thousand planets from the high-dimensional sword realm. There's a total of 4,323 planets. Among them, there are 4,000 resource planets, 102 fixed stars, and 221 civilization planets. Feng Xingjian said, however, these 221 civilization planets are of different levels. Some of them are still in ancient feudal civilizations, some are in modern societies, and some are societies with superpowers. However, their levels aren't too high, and their strongest powers are probably around tier 3 or 4 of the divine level. Other than that, there are 104 spiritual ability engines, over 10 billion people left on the Morning Star, and 10 members of the God Massacre team. All of them have battle prowess equivalent to tier 6 of the divine level. There seemed to be golden light flashing in Prince's eyes as he asked anxiously, "How are we going to split them?" Feng Xingjian said directly, "I want the 10 billion people on planet Qiming and the 221 civilization stars. You guys can split the rest." The Silver Mage King raised his brows, not expecting that Feng Xingjian would set out such a condition. In theory, the most precious items were still the psionic energy engine, the God Massacre team, and the 102 stars. Those were all super good items. Star and population. Star by Feng Star, the resources and star. The Silver Mage King did not understand why Feng Xingjian would make such a choice. He turned to look at Feng Xingjian and said, "Feng Xingjian, are you sure you'll treat these people well? Don't worry, I won't sacrifice them," Feng Xingjian said calmly. Seeing that the Silver Mage King still wanted to ask, Urbian said, "Don't worry. I can assure you that Feng Xingjian won't mistreat these people." When he performed the 7-emotion sword with Feng Xingjian previously, although he had not been able to find out the principles behind the 7-emotion sword's power source, he had some guesses. The reason why Feng Xingjian wanted so many people was naturally to let the 9 lives helix enter deep into the group consciousness. This would allow him to perform the Sattva sword technique at any time. After all, although the 7-emotion sword technique was amazing and could make use of emotional changes to quickly enter deep into the group consciousness, he would have to perform it from the beginning each time. This was because there was no fixed connection with the world, and there was no way for him to perform the Sattva sword technique. Although the Silver Mage King still had some doubts, since Urbian had given his word, he did not continue to ask. After all, he trusted Urbian's character. Feng Xingjian took away all the cultural stars and people, leaving Urbian, the prince, and the Silver Mage King to split the remaining things. Although the prince frowned a little when Feng Xingjian took away all the people and seemed to want to say something, he did not say anything in the end. Although her Son of Heaven sword manipulation art also required people to strengthen her dragon chi and increase its prowess, her contribution in this battle was far from Feng Xingjian's. With her pride, she would not be able to lower herself to snatch people. Therefore, the 3 of them split the loot. Urbian put in the most out of the 3 of them, taking away 3,000 resource planets and 52 stars. The Silver Mage King and the Prince each took 500 resource planets, 25 stars, and 5 members of the God Massacre team. As for the spiritual ability engine, some people would research it together and share it. After splitting up all the loot, the group once again passed through the quantum foam and returned to Earth's position in the solar system. The others returned to Miracle World, while Feng Xingjian stayed behind in the solar system and started to calculate Earth's orbital position. He wanted to return Earth in one piece. After spending 3 hours, Feng Xingjian finally managed to perfectly deduce the Earth's current orbital position, its angle of movement, as well as its speed of rotation and other parameters. He carefully released the planet-capturing device and released Earth. As space fluctuated, a transparent vortex suddenly enlarged rapidly in void space. Colorful colors gushed out fiercely from a spot in void space and then gathered into one, taking on the appearance of Earth. To the people on Earth, the entire process was like the starry sky had suddenly disappeared and all organizations had lost contact with outer space. An unknown light source had appeared in the sky, ensuring that the sky was dark and the night was bright. The Earth under their feet was no longer rotating, but there was still an unknown power that generated gravity. The planet-capturing device could compress space and capture the entire planet. It could also provide various living environments of different levels. However, the people on Earth did not know about these. Therefore, the world was immediately thrown into chaos. However, over 10 hours later, everything returned to normal. One could not help but wonder if everything they had experienced earlier was a dream or if God was playing a joke on humanity. Looking at the Earth that was operating normally, Feng Xingjian let out a breath. He had finally resolved this matter. However, he did not bother with the matters of Earth society first. Instead, he focused his attention on the high-dimensional sword realm. Next would be the problem of the population he had. Firstly, they definitely could not be placed in his high-dimensional sword realm for a long period of time. After all, in the high-dimensional space-time, ordinary living creatures would not be able to sense space-time at all. They would become mindless vegetables. Since they could not be placed in the high-dimensional world, they could only be placed in the three-dimensional physical world. In the three-dimensional physical world, the only places that could be considered as Feng Xingjian's territory were Miracle World and Earth. Chapter 1111. Miracle World's martial prowess was too high, and there were endless divine-level experts. There would also be many disasters and enemies in the future. Therefore, Feng Xingjian immediately eliminated this option. Then the only option left was Earth. The planet-capturing devices are no different from ordinary spheres. Therefore, even if I were to place them on Earth, I'd still have to protect them. At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian arrived at the South Pole's ice plains with a flash. With a single thought, he went several thousand meters deep into the ice plains. Then, with a clap of his hands, the surrounding layers of ice suddenly bounced off, creating a huge ice cavern with a diameter of over 100 meters. In the ice cavern, Feng Xingjian released many planet-capturing devices that were equipped with a civilization star. Of course, this also included the planet-capturing devices that were equipped with a morning star's population of over 10 billion people. Many palm-sized spheres floated in midair, spinning incessantly around the center of the ice cavern. It was like a solar system that had been shrunk countless times and then magnified countless times. Next is the defensive measures. Sword light flashed in Feng Xingjian's eyes, and the 4 streams of sword intents from the celestial eradication sword technique integrated into the ice cavern. Once they discovered any outsiders, these 4 streams of sword intents would unleash a Tier 7 divine level expert's attack. The Heartsword Path martial art projection then set up illusory arts so that others would not be able to detect this place. The Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection then set up 99,000 Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprints, illuminating the entire ice cavern with a golden glow. After doing all these, the entire ice cavern could be said to be temporarily safe. Therefore, Feng Xingjian returned to Miracle World once and brought the young female android Jiuqian over. The reason why he sent Jiuqian over was naturally because he needed someone who was loyal to him to protect and manage these planets. There were over 100 billion people on these several hundred planets. If all of them were to be developed and his 9 lives helix entered deep into their group consciousness, the prowess of the Sattva sword technique would be unimaginable. Moreover, the young female android Jiuqian did not need to eat or drink. She could keep on extracting vacuum 0 points to survive. She was perfect for protecting and managing this place. After bringing 9,000, Feng Xingjian's martial will swept out toward the several hundred metal spheres before him. Not only could these planet-capturing devices compress space and capture planets, but they could also freely adjust the internal gravity, temperature, sunlight, atmospheric composition, and other environments to ensure that any planet that entered the device would remain the same. The various gravitational forces and fluctuations of the planet inside would not affect the outside world. At the same time, it did not prevent outsiders from interfering. It was just like how Feng Xingjian was able to send his marshal while sweeping in and interfere with any corner of the planets. It was as if the outer shell of the metal sphere did not exist at all, and there was only a compressed space before him. How miraculous! The technological theories contained in this planet-capturing device are probably no less advanced than the psionic engine. Feng Xingjian marveled in his heart again. He was even more curious about the technology and Catherine's origins. It was a pity that the other party and the Morning Star had both died in the Seven Emotions sword, and there was no way for him to find out even if he wanted to. Feng Xingjian still focused his attention on the 100 billion people before him. The first is the survivors from the Morning Star. Feng Xingjian's marshal will gathered into the three metal spheres. These three metal spheres contained large areas of shattered metal land. The remaining 10 billion or so people from the Morning Star were all in them. However, due to the shattering of the land, a large number of buildings had been destroyed and collapsed. They were not in a good situation. If no one took care of them, they would probably deplete their resources before long and gradually perish. Feng Xingjian gave it some thought, and then sent out a royal heavenly great art martial art projection. Looking at the densely packed metal land fragments in void space, the royal heavenly great art martial art projection put its hands together, and the royal heavenly great palm imprint was instantly activated. Under the astonished gazes of countless people, countless golden palms of different sizes appeared in the sky. The bigger ones were like skyscrapers, while the smaller ones were the size of small cars. The moment these huge golden palms appeared, they started to drag and capture pieces of the metal land fragments. A few hours later, the countless fragments were once again pieced together to form a complete piece of land. Feng Xingjian then pieced the remains in the other two metal spheres together to form a piece of land. When he was reassembling these pieces of land, the Heart Sword Path martial art projection had also entered the other civilization planets. There were elevated roads that were densely packed and complicated like spider webs, endless traffic, skyscrapers everywhere, and a tremendous amount of electromagnetic wave signals that were transmitted in the air. The Heart Sword Path martial art projection scanned this civilization planet with his martial will and immediately got a rough understanding of the entire planet situation. This planet was a world with prosperous technology and was about the same as Earth's. However, it did not have any extraordinary powers. Even the terrain is very similar. It's probably also captured from a parallel universe to Earth. The Heart Sword Path walked slowly on the streets, but the people in the surroundings could not see him at all. If I were to unify the world, there would be too much trouble. Feng Xingjian was not willing to waste too much of the world to manage the many planets. Therefore, after giving it some thought, he made a decision. The most convenient method is probably still religion. It'll be able to enter deep into the group consciousness in the shortest and longest period of time. And if I want to set up a religion, at the thought of this, the Heart Sword Path martial art projection's gaze flickered and then disappeared without a trace. The strongest country on this civilization planet was called the White Shadow Country. This country could be said to be the best on this planet in terms of military strength, economy, and politics. The aircraft carrier strike groups under them could patrol the seven seas, and they could even casually fire cannons at other countries and carry out various military activities. The office building of the White Shadow Country's Department of National Defense was called the Heavenly Shield Building. It was a huge office building that took up an area of over 2 million square meters and had a height of 30 floors. The Heart Sword Path martial art projection looked at the Heavenly Shield Building under his feet. With a flash, he arrived in an office that took up an area of over 200 square meters. Looking at the elderly man who was staring at the computer screen, the Heart Sword Path martial art projection said hello. The Minister of National Defense, Pasan, raised his head abruptly and looked at the black-robed man who had suddenly appeared. He asked in surprise and doubt, "Who are you?" "God." With a flick of Feng Xingzhan's finger, a light spot slowly floated onto the elderly man's body. At the next moment, a series of intense changes appeared on the elderly man's body. His skin, bones, blood vessels, internal organs, and muscles were all being reconstructed by Feng Xingzhan's martial will. It was as if his entire body had been reconstructed by atoms. Other than his face, the other parts of his body were even healthier and stronger than that of a 25-year-old young man. Even his abdomen and chest had abdominal and pectoral muscles. Sensing the extremely relaxed and energetic feeling in his body, the elderly man clenched his hands and cried out, "Oh my God! What did you do? I'll bestow you eternal life, and you'll contribute your faith." As they spoke, the two of them went through a series of colorful changes, and they arrived at the parking lot outside from the office. Then, under the elderly man's astonished gaze, the entire heavenly shield building shrank rapidly, eventually turning into a palm-sized model that appeared in Feng Xingzhan's hand. The elderly man could even see and hear the astonished and panicked cries of the people in the building. Similar scenes continue to play out across the entire planet. With the carrot and stick, coupled with the heart sword path's illusory arts and ability to control people's hearts, most of the government's upper echelon on Earth were under Feng Xingzhan's control in the blink of an eye. What followed was the joint promotion of Feng Xingzhan's religion by all the governments. Not only did the various countries' leaders and famous people from all walks of life speak for them, but the Heart Sword Path had also personally performed miracles. After splitting seas and moving mountains a few times, moving continents, and restoring people's youth, Feng Xingzhan's religion developed like a raging fire. The 9 Lives Helix also took this opportunity to smoothly enter deep into the group consciousness. Chapter 11-12. 1 week passed by, and Feng Xingzhan had set up his religion on over 200 civilization planets. However, as the time was too short, not everyone revered and believed in him. However, the worship, beliefs, and prayers of several 10 billion people allowed the 9 Lives Helix's consciousness to enter deep into the group consciousness very quickly. Feng Xingzhan could sense that he would be able to change the destinies of several 10 billion people with just a single thought. He would be able to completely change the direction of the future, causing the birth and destruction of countless parallel worlds. This feeling of controlling the will of the heavens with each and every action, changing the future, and writing history made him feel an endless sense of power. The Dragon Chi contributed by several 10 billion people also allowed his royal heavenly great art martial art projection to strengthen rapidly. His martial will had far surpassed that of other martial art projections, reaching an unprecedented 15,000 points. With a martial will of such a level, he would be able to suppress even the prince head-on. Ordinary Tier 6 divine level experts would not be able to withstand a single blow from him. After completing all these, Feng Xingzhan was now able to perform the Sattva sword technique at any time and place. Moreover, as the number of people who believed in him increased, his grasp of the will of the heavens and the will of the heavens increased, and the Sattva sword technique's prowess would also become increasingly stronger. However, it's still only within this universe. Feng Xingzhan's eyes narrowed as he thought. The Sattva sword technique can only affect the universe it's in. If I were to head to other universes, I'll need to open up passageways and guide the powers of the Sattva sword technique over. It seems I'll have to look for Urbian and ask him for the method to open up the quantum foam. Also, Feng Xingzhan's gaze looked toward void space. There were only over 4 months left to his 5-year lifespan. He turned to look at Zhu Qian, instructing her to stay here and watch over the civilization planets and assist in the development of the religion there. He then left behind a hint of his martial will and left Earth, returning to Miracle World. The moment he returned to the Imperial Capital's palace, he looked for the prince and said, "I'll use the 10 billion people on the Morning Star to exchange for the lifespan conversion technique with you." As he said that, he took out the planet-capturing device that contained the 10 billion people on planet Qiming. This was a plan that Feng Xingjian had made earlier. He did not have much time left. He had more than 4 months, and he was not confident that he could break free from the influence of the devil god. Now, he was in a desperate situation and wanted to try anything he could think of. Although the prince's Mountainous Seas Book of the Way could not increase his lifespan, the prince's lifespan conversion technique was a technique from the Western continent's upper realm. Perhaps it would have a miraculous effect. Prince glanced at the planet-capturing device in Feng Xingjian's hand and asked in surprise, "You're already thinking about your lifespan at such a young age? Yes or no?" Feng Xingjian said straightforwardly. The prince thought about it and said directly, "Of course, I'll give it to you. How can I not give such a good deal?" To ordinary people, the lifespan conversion technique was an extremely precious secret manual. However, to people like her who came from the higher realms of mortal sex, it was just a basic technique. On the contrary, the 10 billion people on planet Qiming could not only strengthen her foundation greatly, but also turn into resources for her to cultivate the Son of Heaven's sword manipulation art. These people came from a world with high technology and had received all sorts of learning and training since young. They were all outstanding talents. Therefore, Feng Xingjian handed the planet-capturing device to the prince, and the prince passed the incantation for the lifespan conversion technique to Feng Xingjian. After receiving this secret manual, Feng Xingjian immediately wanted to leave to give it a try. However, before he left, he turned and asked the prince, "Oh, right. Erbian wants me to ask you about the White Emperor Zenith sword." This was something Erbian had wanted him to ask the prince previously. However, when he was chasing after Catherine and fighting against the Morning Star, he did not remember to do it. Therefore, he decided to ask now. I've spoken to him about it." The prince frowned and said, "In the past, when I fought against the Pope from 1,000 years ago, the White Emperor Zenith sword he performed had 28 sections. Its prowess was so great that even the Pope back then was unable to unleash it completely. But now, for some reason, there are 7 missing." Feng Xingjian nodded. Since the other party had already spoken to Erbian, he did not say anything else. Right now, all of his thoughts were focused on the lifespan conversion technique. With a flash, his silhouette disappeared. He turned into an invisible light wave and arrived several 10,000 meters up in the sky. Lifespan conversion technique. The method of converting lifespan and strength was a unique martial technique of the Western land. However, there was also a depletion and a difference in power between the two techniques. The Mountainous Seas Book of the Way that Feng Xingjian had obtained in the past was a martial technique from the Western land's mortal dynasty. Although it was amazing, how could it be compared to the top-notch martial technique that the prince had obtained from the Western land's higher realm? The lifespan conversion technique that the prince had imparted to Feng Xingjian came from one of the 3 strongest immortal sects in the Western land's higher realm, the Ascendant Heavenly Sect. This conversion technique was called the longevity art. It was many times more perfect and powerful than the incomplete Mountainous Seas Book of the Way. This martial technique had many uses. Firstly, it could convert one's martial will into lifespan. Secondly, one's lifespan could be converted into martial will. Simultaneously, lifespan was used as an all-purpose energy source in this martial technique. It could be converted into all sorts of common energy sources and powers. It could even be used to push one's martial arts and increase one's lethality in actual combat. Feng Xingjian used the longevity art to sense his remaining lifespan. It was displayed as 4 months and 16 days. Letting out a deep breath, he started to attempt to convert his martial will into lifespan. In that instant, the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projections, martial will was like gasoline that had been ignited, burning up fiercely. Feng Xingjian guided this power according to the longevity arts method. However, after half an hour had passed, and the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projections martial will had dropped from 15,000 to 12,000, his lifespan still did not change at all. A hint of disappointment flashed on his face. Although he knew that it was impossible to break through the demonic god's restrictions so easily, he still felt disappointed that he had truly failed at this moment. However, Fang Xingjian's mind was firm after all. After feeling dispirited for a few seconds, he regained his composure. If I can't increase my lifespan, then I'll try to see if I can convert my lifespan. In fact, this was also a doubt that Fang Xingjian had had since a long time ago. His lifespan could not be increased, yet it seemed that it could not be decreased either. Regardless of whether he was in the hidden treasure or in other worlds where time flowed faster, his lifespan seemed to be bound to miracle worlds 5 years later. It would not increase or decrease by a single second. Therefore, he had always had a doubt. While he was unable to increase his lifespan, would he not die prematurely under the demonic god surveillance? Would it work if he were to convert his lifespan into powers? In the past, he had not had the chance to do this. However, now that he had obtained the longevity art, he had a way to do it. Chapter 11:13. Do I have to die that day no matter what? Fang Xingjian gritted his teeth, activated the longevity art, and started to convert his lifespan into martial will. Bang! Almost at the instant he activated the martial technique, Fang Xingjian felt a series of rumbles in his entire consciousness. It was as if he had been blown by a strong gale or tornado. It had been a very long time since Fang Xingjian had experienced such a feeling. How powerful was his current power? Furthermore, his main body was still in the high-dimensional space-time, and even a supernova explosion would find it hard to affect him. At this moment, when he converted his lifespan, there was a feeling as if there was a raging tempest. It was as if an ordinary person had knocked open a nuclear reactor. Loud rumbling sounds rang out in void space, and the space around Fang Xingjian started to burn like flames. Of course, this was not really burning. It was just an appearance produced by extreme distortions in space. Simultaneously, Fang Xingjian sensed that the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection's martial will was rising rapidly, as if it was sitting on a rocket. In the blink of an eye, it had broken through to 15,000 points, making up for all the losses from earlier. The growth was still continuing, and Fang Xingjian could sense that there seemed to be a never-ending and boundless power in void space. It was so immense that even the Sattva sword technique seemed to be incomparable to it. Boom, boom, boom. The Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projections martial was like flames that had been doused with gasoline. As his lifespan was converted, his power increased rapidly. In the blink of an eye, his martial will had broken through to 20,000 points. Then it went to 21,000, 23,245, 25,443, 29857. Fang Xingjian had never felt this exhilarating feeling of his powers increasing rapidly before. He felt as if he would be able to destroy the entire miracle world with just a slight sweep of his thoughts. However, what was even more terrifying was that his martial will was still continuing to grow. 41244 56788 68228 79765 100000. A loud explosive rumble rang out. As Fang Xingjian's martial will broke through to 100,000 points, the surrounding space shattered, turning into an endless stretch of absolute darkness that extended out rapidly. He did not use any attacks, martial arts, abilities, or divine abilities. With a martial will at 100,000 points, just by relying on his existence alone, he was able to shatter space, accomplishing something that no one in the entire miracle world had been able to do since ancient times. Moreover, this was not an ordinary shattering. After shattering, the space actually did not repair itself. It was like a sledgehammer crushing the floor of a building. If the sledgehammer was not removed, the floor could not be repaired. It was the same now. It was as if as long as Fang Xingjian's martial will at 100,000 points was here, the space would not be able to recover. Space shattered, and the dimension disappeared. With the shattered darkness as the center, it spread rapidly. All the matter that was dragged into it fell directly into the zero dimension, just like the singularity before the Big Bang. If this space continued to shatter and spread, the entire universe would probably be reduced to zero dimension, returning to the state before the Big Bang. However, Feng Xingjian reacted very quickly. He first stopped the longevity art's lifespan conversion and then started to work hard to retract the influence of his martial will. This won't do. With a power of this level, its very existence is destructive. It's useless to just retract it. At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian sent the Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection's martial will back into the high-dimensional sword realm, reducing it to 90,000 points at one go. After he completed this series of actions, the shattered space stopped spreading and then started to repair itself. Looking at the newly recovered space, Feng Xingjian exhaled. Simultaneously, Prince, Urbian, and the Silver Mage King appeared before him simultaneously. Clearly, they had all sensed the abnormality from earlier. "What's going on?" Prince shouted. "I sensed a very strong sense of danger when I was struck by the sudden inspiration earlier. That feeling is everywhere, as if there's a blade on my back. It's like the sky is going to collapse and the entire world is going to be destroyed," the Silver Mage King said. "Feng Xingjian, what did you do?" Urbian also looked at Feng Xingjian, as if waiting for his reply. Feng Xingjian fell silent for a moment before saying, "I'm cultivating a martial technique. As I'm not too familiar with it, I accidentally shattered a part of space. Don't worry, something like this won't happen again in the future." Hearing this, the others' countenances changed. They wanted to ask further, but since Feng Xingjian was unwilling to say, there was nothing they could do. Urbian and the Silver Mage King left one after another, leaving Prince behind. She looked at Feng Xingjian and sent a message into Feng Xingjian's mind. "You performed the longevity art earlier?" Feng Xingjian threw her a glance and did not hide anything. He nodded and said, "It's true that I converted a part of my lifespan into power." Prince felt puzzled. Although he felt that Feng Xingjian did not seem to be lying, he had a nagging feeling that he seemed to have missed out on something. After sending Prince and the others away, Feng Xingjian continued to cultivate the longevity art. However, this time around, he carefully controlled the degree of conversion, strengthening all of his martial art projections to a martial will of 90,000 points. A martial will of 90,000 points was almost the limit of the power that Feng Xingjian could control at his current realm. If it continued to increase, he would only be able to carry out very rough control, offense and defense. It might even result in the terrifying danger of space shattering and the world returning to zero. Sensing the overwhelming power in the Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection, Feng Xingjian felt very complicated. This increase in power should have come from the demonic god, right? Feng Xingjian could sense that before his lifespan was up, it was actually limitless. Before the 5-year period was up, he would not be able to increase his lifespan or shorten it no matter what he did. It was even possible that he would not die no matter what he did or how much risk he took. Everything is due to the influence of the demonic god's will. Compared to this omnipotent and omnipresent power, what did a martial will of 90,000 points count for? Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed. All the signs showed that his chances of living past the 5-year period were very slim. Since that's the case, I'll have to make early preparations. At the thought of this, with a flash, he once again returned to the imperial capital. Although he was unwilling to die and even feared death, Feng Xingjian was also calm enough to face death. Since that was the case, he would have to make some preparations. If he were to really die over 4 months later, then he would have to leave behind some backup plans for the influences under him. He would not allow others to take advantage of him. Other than this, Feng Xingjian also wanted to leave behind a few backup plans for the future. Chapter 11:14. Feng Xingjian's silhouette flashed, and he first met up with Urbian in the high-dimensional space-time. Urbian seemed to have already noticed Feng Xingjian's changes. His high-dimensional senses could completely see through the changes in Feng Xingjian's martial art projection. It was just that he had not revealed this to the Silver Mage King and the Prince. Seeing that Feng Xingjian had come looking for him, Feng Xingjian asked, Isn't your martial will a little too strong? Although he was unable to detect the full powers of Feng Xingjian's high-dimensional body, just the waves that Feng Xingjian's martial art projection were already enough to make Erbian, who had high-dimensional sensory abilities, feel extremely astonished. Feng Xingjian said calmly, "It's just a little improvement. I came here because I want to learn about mass energy conversion and quantum foam from you." Erbian used mass energy conversion to fend off black holes and used quantum foam to traverse the universe. These were all abilities that Feng Xingjian valued very highly. "If you're willing to teach me, just state your conditions. I'll agree to anything that I can do." However, after hearing Feng Xingjian's words, Erbian let out a mysterious smile. Under Feng Xingjian's puzzled gaze, he sighed and said, "As the saying goes, those who are closely involved can't see clearly. This is probably what it means." "Feng Xingjian, haven't you realized it yet?" "Realize what?" Feng Xingjian asked with a frown. Erbian said, "The speed of your advancement, the increase in your realm, and the increase in your battle prowess. They're getting increasingly faster than before. Haven't you realized it?" Feng Xingjian was slightly stunned, and the situation of his cultivation over the past 4 years immediately flashed in his mind. From being a knight apprentice to becoming a second transition knight, Tier 1 of the divine level, Tier 6 of the divine level, and even high-dimensional sword arts and the royal heavenly great art. Not only did his cultivation speed not decrease as the difficulty increased, but it also got increasingly faster. However, it was not as if there were no explanations for these. Other than his talent, there were also mystical prints, martial will, technological information, the 9-tiered heavens, and many other things that could assist his cultivation. But Feng Xingjian looked at his own body, and a glint of light flashed across his eyes. "Could it be your aptitude? No, not only your aptitude, but also your luck and destiny. It seems to be getting stronger at every moment. This makes your cultivation speed faster and faster. It's like a rolling snowball, constantly accelerating." Erbian's gaze seemed to pierce through the 9 hells, seeing the changes in countless timelines. "I've observed this situation for a long time. This is also the reason why I'm working with you." Listening to Erbian's words, Feng Xingjian felt more confident. He thought to himself, "As I get closer to the day of my death, my aptitude continues to rise. So the closer I am to death, the stronger I become." At this moment, Feng Xingjian felt an extreme sense of irony. It was as if a demonic god was playing a joke on him. Didn't he want to break free from the control of others? Didn't he want to become increasingly stronger and stop his own destiny? Then the closer he was to death, the stronger he would become. However, no matter how strong he became, he would always fail and eventually die at the moment when he was the most powerful. How ironic was this? Suddenly, the image of his mother, Feng Yueru, flashed across his mind. They were both geniuses, and their cultivation speed had also gotten increasingly faster. She had also died at an early age, dying an unnatural death. This caused Feng Xingjian to frown deeply. Erbian continued, "It's even hard for me to evaluate your current aptitude. It's no longer just aptitude, but a combination of fate, karma, probabilities, and space-time." A person's cultivation outcome was not only related to their aptitude, it was also related to their background, legacies, luck, character, and even a small choice. In Erbian's opinion, Feng Xingjian's current aptitude was no longer as simple as just aptitude. He was continuously improving in almost all the areas that were beneficial to his cultivation. Haven't you noticed? You've actually already learned about mass energy conversion and quantum foam. Feng Xingjian was stunned for a moment. He recalled the various scenes, information, and data when Erbian performed these 2 moves. Simultaneously, the Silver Mage King stood on a snowy peak in the north. Several thousand spheres kept on spinning around behind him. He looked toward the sky, seeming to see through the atmospheric layer and see the changes in the 9-tiered heavens. "What on earth are your plans?" A short moment later, a voice rang out behind the Silver Mage King. "Senior Mage King, how have you been?" The Silver Mage King turned and saw a silver-haired young man standing behind him with a smile. It was Wei Jin, the young man who had exchanged blows with the Silver Mage King on the Morning Star. Looking at the young man, the Silver Mage King asked, "What are you doing here?" Wei Jin shrugged. "Senior, why do you have to ask a question you already know the answer to? Do you still remember the question I asked on the Morning Star? What's Senior's answer?" The Silver Mage King's eyes narrowed slightly, took a long look at Wei Jin, and said, "If it's really as you say, then I'll really have to take a good look." Wei Jin smiled, and a huge golden door suddenly appeared behind him. It then opened up, and he turned to invite, "Senior, please." The Silver Mage King threw a glance toward the golden door and walked in expressionlessly. Wei Jin followed closely behind him, and a short moment later, the door closed and then disappeared. Another Silver Mage King appeared at the spot where the Silver Mage King had been standing. Clearly, the one who had just stepped through the golden door was just a clone. This was very normal. Faced with the invitation of an unfathomable and extremely mysterious influence, it was impossible for him to casually descend with his main body. Looking at the slowly disappearing golden door, the Silver Mage King mumbled, "The Saint Association. I hope it won't disappoint me." In the Empire's eastern sand region, 3 demigod-level powerhouses wearing uniforms and bloody capes streaked across the sky at high speed, dragging 3 long air currents behind them. A small town at the borders appeared before them in the blink of an eye. This small town by the name of Gold Mountain Town had once prospered because of the gold mines. Countless miners, bandits, big companies, prostitutes, gold diggers, and many other people had gathered here. However, as the gold mines dried up, the population here decreased, and the once prosperous town became dilapidated. The 3 demigods in the sky had come here because of a murder case. 1 month ago, the town's mayor had sent out a letter requesting for help. A massacre had happened there, and everyone in the town was in a state of panic. Therefore, they requested for the knights from the nearby Yellow Sand City to assist in the investigation. 1 week later, 5 knights were sent to the town and then lost contact with them. Yellow Sand City then sent out another 10 knights and 1 conferred knight, but they still lost contact with them. Although the Empire was currently at its peak, and the Sand Country, Plains, and many island countries in the Western Sea were all shrewd, and a tremendous amount of resources were imported into the country through trade, and the number of knights was increasing, the disappearance of a conferred knight was still a major matter. The city lord sensed that something was wrong and immediately reported it to the Eastern Sand Region's regional government. Therefore, this time around, a total of 3 demigod experts came to the Gold Mountain town to investigate the situation. Chapter 11:15. Looking at the small town under their feet, the Gold Mountain town, which had been gradually declining, now looked even more desolate. There was not a single person on the streets. 3 demigod experts landed slowly in the center of the town. Looking at the desolate town, the demigod expert in the lead, Dennis, said calmly, "There's not a single living thing within a range of 10 lis. There's really something wrong. To think that they would harm a town's commoners, attack government officials, and even attack a conferred knight. They're really audacious." Another old man next to him frowned, his eyes filled with fury. This old man was originally the sect leader of a faction. However, as Fang Xingjian made up his mind to unify all the factions in the Empire, and as Tyrant led the East Military Execution Order in a bloodbath, he immediately stood his ground against the opinions of the masses and wiped out the opposition in his faction. He then sensibly joined the Empire's side, and reality proved that his choice was correct. Thereafter, as Fang Xingjian fought in all directions, slaughtering the plains, suppressing various countries, and even going up against the Holy See of Truth, the Empire's national power grew stronger by the day. The country was strong, and the people were wealthy. Visitors came from all directions, and Fang Xingjian's reputation grew stronger and stronger. His reputation as the Sword Overlord resounded through the clouds. It could be said that the current empire was not as powerful as it had been in the past 200 years. Regardless of whether it was the aristocrats or commoners, Their living standards had all risen to unprecedented heights. Moreover, as the imperial capital started to popularize the high technological creations that Feng Xinjiang had passed down, the empire would only become stronger and stronger. In such a flourishing age, the old man had also received a tremendous amount of benefits from the empire's development. Regardless of whether it was in terms of the clan's abilities or influence, they had all risen. Right now, he was supporting Feng Xinjiang and the empire from the bottom of his heart. It could be said that he had perfectly transformed from a faction sect leader into a person who benefited from the empire's rules, as well as a protector. Right now, knowing that someone was so rebellious as to attack the government and wipe out an entire town's citizens, he was naturally extremely infuriated. Dennis, who was the leader, waved his hand and said, "Let's go and see if there are any clues left behind." The three of them circled around the town, but they still did not find a single person. The whole town was extremely quiet, without any chaos. Everything was quietly in place, as if their owner had just left for a short while. To be able to kill or abduct so many people in an instant, that person must be at least a demigod realm expert, Dennis frowned. The demigod elder let out a cold snort and said, "Humph, it must be those rebellious factions that are causing trouble. These rebels and traitors." At this moment, a cold voice came from behind him. "Are you looking for me?" "Who is it?" "Monster, be careful." Boom, boom, boom. Explosions rang out, and flames that soared into the sky enveloped the entire town. However, before the town could start burning, surging waves of air followed closely behind, tearing the entire town into pieces. The golden figure looked at the high temperature and flames that were wreaking havoc around him in a daze and said slowly, "Deities, is this considered an attack? Run. Don't fight him head on." As a series of intense, fighting sounds rang out, the densely packed, thunderous explosions gradually disappeared. The eyes of the demigod expert, Dennis, who was in the lead, were filled with horror. His head was covered in blood, and his face was contorted from the agony. A golden claw reached out from his chest, and it was holding onto his heart. Dennis' body kept on twisting and struggling, as if he was still trying to recover. However, he was unable to succeed. He could only stare at the monster that was encompassed by a layer of golden stratum corneum and kept on swinging its thick tail. Blood kept on spurting out from Dennis' mouth. The East military order won't let you off." The monster revealed a mocking smile. "I'll be the one who won't let them off." At the next moment, under Dennis' horrified gaze, the monster opened its mouth at an unbelievable angle and swallowed Dennis' head. A bone-chilling chewing sound kept on ringing out from the monster's mouth. As the monster swallowed, Dennis' body continued to struggle to recover. Even the head that had been swallowed into the monster's mouth kept on trying hard to regenerate its brain. Clearly, this demigod expert had already reached the realm of regenerating his brain. Although he was suffering from serious injuries and had been swallowed, he continued to struggle. However, to the monster, his struggles only increased the enjoyment of eating. The monster chewed on the pieces of flesh that kept on squirming and regenerating in its mouth. Each time it opened its mouth, Dennis' horrified face that kept on contorting could be seen. The monster smiled and said, "Not bad, Deities. The humans in this world are very delicious." Behind it, a monster that was encompassed by a layer of purple stratum corneum and had a tail like the golden monster said respectfully, "It's good that you're satisfied." If Feng Xinjiang were here, he would immediately be able to recognize that this purple monster was the evil god tribe's warrior from the evil god summoning ritual. However, right now, he no longer had the arrogance he had during the summoning ritual. He was standing behind the golden monster like a subject. It was because the hierarchy within the evil god tribe was extremely strict. Even if there was a difference of one level between them, the higher-ups would have absolute authority over the lower-ups. To the evil god tribe's warrior, Deities, this golden monster was an existence that was far above them, an existence that they could never reach. The golden monster swallowed the remaining half of Dennis' body into its stomach. At the same time, it said with a slight lisp, Deities, you said that you've been defeated in this world before? By a person who looks a lot like Liamping? A hint of hatred flashed in Debris' eyes. That's right. That guy is called Feng Xingjian. He's a top-notch expert in this world. However, compared to us, the evil god tribe, he's only a mid-tier warrior. However, he's very good at illusory arts. I was deceived by him. All right, I'm not concerned about his abilities. The golden monster licked its lips, and its eyes were as cold and cunning as a snake's. What I'm asking you is he very similar to Liamping? Debris was stunned for a moment before it nodded and said, that's right. The golden monster smiled. Debris, do you know what this means? Debris shook its head. The golden monster swayed its tail gently and said slowly, this means that he's an unrivaled delicacy. Smiling, the golden monster instructed, all right, continue to set up the blood river. After we've completely stabilized the coordinates here, we'll go and have a taste of him. I hope that he won't disappoint me. Saying this, the monster's face revealed hints of morbid brutality and craziness. At the sight of the other party's appearance, Debris could not help but tremble a little as it recalled the various rumors about the other party. This person was an existence that was viewed as crazy, brutal, and unreasonable even in the evil god tribe. It even had a record of devouring its own kind. Even though it was merely standing next to the other party, Debris felt a chill that came from the bottom of its heart. Chapter 11:16. All three demigods have gone missing? Tyrant looked at the document in his hands and narrowed his eyes. The world had undergone a metamorphosis, and the ether particles were unprecedentedly active. Coupled with the Empire's abundance of resources and the flourishing of martial arts, countless knights had improved at a rapid rate. Other than the divine-level experts from the past, there were now over 10 new divine-level experts. However, there were only several hundred demigod existences across the entire empire, and each of them could be said to be a dominating existence. Right now, 3 of them had gone missing at the same time, due to a single case. This was something that had never happened since Feng Xingjian took over the empire. After Tyrant found out about this, he no longer sent ordinary divine-level experts to investigate. Instead, he personally led a team of several hundred elites from the East Military Order to the Eastern Sand region. Right now, Tyrant had gone through countless hardships in cultivation. He also had the various resources and heavenly and earthly treasures that Feng Xingjian had given him. He also had the reinforcement from the 9th level of the Mystical Prince, had read countless secret manuals from martial arts factions, and had the Twin Moons technique to strive for the divine level together with others. He had already reached the pinnacle of Tier 5 of the divine level. The reason why he had personally made a move this time around was very simple. For the other party to be able to make 3 divine-level experts disappear without them knowing, the other party must be in existence that was at least at the divine level. There were still some risks in sending out other divine-level experts. Therefore, he had personally made a move to not give the other party any chance. Therefore, one day later, over 100 elites followed Tyrant to the Eastern Sand region and arrived at the Gold Mountain town in the desert. Right now, the Gold Mountain town did not look as if it had been destroyed after a great battle. Everything still appeared so quiet and lonely, just like how it had been before Dennis and the other 2 demigods had arrived. With a wave of Tyrant's hand, the elites from the East Military Order, who were dressed in blue and white uniforms, turned into many black shadows and flashed out. They searched through the entire town like tidal waves. "Commander, there's no one. Sir, there's nothing. Based on the traces, the people here have only left for an hour at most." Tyrant closed his eyes and listened quietly to his subordinates' reports. Simultaneously, his marshal will also extend it out. It was as if there was nothing it could not enter, checking the entire town situation inch by inch. A short while later, Tyrant opened his eyes, revealing a hint of puzzlement. "Is he really gone?" Holt, who was standing at the side, asked, "Sir, should we give chase?" Holt was a genius who had been in the same realm as Feng Xingjian and had even fought for second place in the regional selection. However, After giving up on competing against Feng Xingjian, he devoted all of his efforts into cultivation and officialdom. With his outstanding talent, he had become a great general under Tyrant. He had even recently attained Tier 2 of the divine level. Hearing Holt's question, Tyrant was just about to nod when he suddenly raised his eyebrows. Something's not right. What's wrong? Holt and the others immediately became alert. He abruptly looked toward the center of the town. Not only are there no people, but there's not even an ant within a 10-mile radius. There's clearly something wrong. Just as Tyrant finished speaking, the entire world suddenly changed color. The sky was suddenly shrouded by layers of red light. Countless cracks opened up on the ground, and red sticky liquid that looked like blood came out. Strong gales that carried a strong stench of blood blew up, as if there were vengeful spirits crying out, trying to act mysterious. Tyrant let out a cold laugh and punched out. It was as if a huge roaring beast had appeared, opening its mouth and wanting to engulf the several thousand square meters in the center of the town. With a single attack, the space of several thousand square meters was completely destroyed, leaving behind a stretch of barren land. However, a golden figure stood proudly on this bare land. The figure was about 3 meters tall and was encompassed by a golden stratum corneum. Under the illumination of the light, it emitted a golden glow. A long tail would occasionally swing behind the figure, lashing out in the air and releasing pitter-patter explosive sounds. Looking at the over 100 people from the East Military Order, the figure licked his lips. So many people have come at once. They're really polite. In fact, he had not wanted to make Tyrant and the others stay. After all, if they were to die, they would become a huge target. Although he was not afraid of the experts in this world, he was more willing to wait until the Red River's blood pool had completely locked down this world before starting the battle. This was a habit of his, and it had saved his life countless times. Therefore, he had always maintained this good habit. However, since the other party had seen through him, he could only make all of them stay at one go. Tyrant looked at the golden figure before him and suddenly frowned. "Who are you?" "My name is Riacious, a gourmet who likes to travel," the person who called himself Riacious said calmly. "Let me have a taste of what you guys taste like." At the next moment, he took a step forward and twisted the head of a demigod in his hand. Then he opened his mouth at an unbelievable angle and stuffed the entire head into his mouth. Seeing this scene, everyone was infuriated. With a single thought, they wanted to charge up and attack Riacious. However, the moment they moved, everyone realized that they were no longer able to move. The corners of Riacious' lips curled up into a hint of a cruel arc. He extended his mouth once again and swallowed the entire demigod's upper body. Fear. Nervousness. Fear. Not knowing what to do. Tyrant's martial will surged crazily all over his body. However, no matter how much power he unleashed, he was still unable to move his body in the slightest. He properly experienced the feeling before death. Let the emotions penetrate into every single piece of your flesh and blood. Only then will you be able to bring me an unparalleled delicacy. Riacious licked the traces of blood at the corner of his lips and walked toward another conferred knight. Looking at the other party's terrified gaze, he seemed to feel even more delighted. "I call this domain the slaughterhouse. It's because when you humans are being eaten, you keep on resisting and moving around. And in this domain, all the fundamental particles are being circulated by my powers. As long as your powers don't surpass mine, you won't be able to do anything." With a sound, Riacious's finger pierced in the top of a conferred knight's skull. Then with a suction, red and white juices flowed out and darted into his mouth. Fury flashed in Holt's eyes, but he could not help but reveal a hint of fear in the depths of his gaze. He continued to communicate with Tyrant through his martial will. "Sir, what should we do? Even you are unable to break free?" Tyrant's countenance was extremely grim. He did not reply to Holt's question and instead said to Riacious, "Monster, if I were you, I'd start escaping now." Riacious turned its head. "Trying to infuriate me? Is there any meaning to that?" He smiled and pointed his index finger at Tyrant. "Then I'll have a taste of you first." However, the next moment, a gush of power that was as vast as the ocean as vast as the starry sky, and as boundless as the universe descended from the sky. Almost in an instant, before Riatius could react, he was squeezed into a pile of meat paste by an invisible force, turning into a meat patty that was spread out on the ground. Chapter 11:17. Recalling Feng Xingjian's clean and efficient actions, they could not help but exclaim that the gap between them and Feng Xingjian was getting increasingly wider. Moreover, Feng Xingjian's every action seemed to have a disposition that was as high and unreachable as the heavenly laws. Everyone, including Tyrant, instantly regained their ability to move. The power of a martial will of 90,000 points was far too domineering. Feng Xingjian felt that he could even vaporize the land and the earth's crust under his feet with a single attack. If he went all out, he might even be able to shatter the entire planet under his feet. He even had the confidence to destroy Jupiter and Saturn, which were over 10 times bigger. However, upon recalling, he realized that he was extremely clear about every single detail and step. It was as if he was reading the lines on his palm, and he even felt that he could repeat them at any time and place. Feng Xingjian pinched lightly with his thumb and index finger, as if he was pinching a mosquito. He pinched Deities between his fingers. Looking at the bloody mud under his feet, Feng Xingjian's gaze flickered, and then he looked in the direction of the other house in the Gold Mountain town. Simultaneously, the blood-red sky and the bloody ground instantly returned to their original state. Riatius's domain had been broken. Looking at Feng Xingjian, Riatius immediately said, "I have 5,000 planets. As long as you're willing to let me go, I can give you any resources you want." However, before it could repeat this a few times, it sensed danger from Tyrant. The hint of martial will that it had left behind in many of its subordinates back then came into effect. With a single thought, its high-dimensional senses were able to clearly see the direction of the Gold Mountain town. This caused this evil god tribe's warrior to no longer have any courage to fight. Its mind was filled with thoughts of how to escape. "It's better for you to die." It was also under its protection that Tyrant and the others were unable to find any traces of the blood pool, no matter how hard they searched. After doing all this, Feng Xingjian's expression remained indifferent. It was as if he had just taken a stroll after a meal. This was the evil god tribe's blood pool. It was the blood river's stronghold in the various worlds. This blood river that the evil god tribe had lived in for countless years flowed through the endless multivariate universes. Each time it passed by a world, it would leave behind a blood pool in that world. In fact, it was about the same for Feng Xingjian. With a martial will of 90,000 points, he could crush most experts in the universe head-on. The two evil god tribes' warriors could destroy countless civilizations and occupy a myriad of planets. However, they were still unable to withstand a single blow from him. What kind of concept was a martial will of 90,000 points? Debris only felt that the surrounding space seemed to have turned into an absolute barrier, instantly imprisoning it. Then its figure shrank rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it was pinched between Feng Xingjian's thumb and index finger. After doing all these, Feng Xingjian slowly walked up to the pool of blood and clapped his hands together. The pool of blood before him seemed to have been squeezed by an endless force, closing up abruptly and completely severing the connection between it and the blood river. Therefore, a celestial eradication technique martial art projection with a martial will of 90,000 points descended, resulting in the scene of Riatius being instantly suppressed. With a soft pitter-patter, the high temperature and high pressure that could be compared to the center of a supernova explosion lasted for about an instant. Then Deities turned into ashes and dissipated into the air. Its first reaction was to dash out and retreat rapidly in the compressed space, arriving in the sky above a blood pool at superluminal speed. However, seeing that its companion had been crushed by Feng Xingjian with a single attack, Deities was horrified. It did not dare to stay any longer and only wanted to escape into the blood river immediately. When it was crushed by Feng Xingjian with a single attack, it shed a layer of flesh and blood, leaving it on the surface of the ground. Its actual body darted down and hit underground. After doing all this, the martial art projection disappeared with a flash, leaving behind Tyrant, Holt, and the others who were astonished and also felt as if they had lost something. Although a martial will of 90,000 points did not have the almost endless destructive prowess of the sattva sword technique, it was something real. It was not as uncontrollable as the sattva sword technique, where it would either die or survive after being tossed out. St. Stop, Debris said with a distorted expression. Feng Xingjian, stop. I admit defeat. I'll go back immediately. Debris' mind was filled with puzzlement. He could not understand why Feng Xingjian had grown to such a level in such a short period of time, while he was crushed to death like a bug. Then, as an agonizing cry rang out, Feng Xingjian exerted a little force with his fingers, and a large half of Debris' body turned into a pool of blood. As long as one passed through the blood pool, they would be able to arrive in this world from the blood river. However, even though Feng Xingjian had compressed layers of space and was moving at superluminal speed at such a close distance, he was still unable to escape from Feng Xingjian's high-dimensional senses. In the small house, the evil god tribe's warrior, Debris, who had exchanged blows with Feng Xingjian during the evil god summoning ritual previously, revealed a horrified and astonished expression. This was a pool with a radius of about 2 meters that was completely soaked in blood. Amidst the pungent smell of blood, many blood bubbles appeared on the surface of the pool, as if there were some living creatures rolling around in it. After Feng Xingjian crushed Debris to death, Riacious, who was several thousand meters underground, was trembling in fear, not daring to move at all. It lowered its eyes and threw a glance at the meat patty under its feet. Evil God Tribe. Feng Xingjian had been conversing with Erbian earlier on and recalled the contents of quantum foam and mass energy conversion. Then he saw the scene of his companion being casually crushed to death like a bug. Feng Xingjian, who was conversing with Erbian, silently retracted his projection. He looked at Erbian and said, "During the period when you and the Silver Mage King are striving for Tier 7 of the Divine level, I plan on making a trip to the Western Land. But before I leave, there are some things I need to do." However, at the first moment they regained their mobility, all of them dropped to their knees. It was because Feng Xingjian was floating slowly above Riacious, who had been crushed into a meat patty. Debris had set up a blood pool in the Gold Mountain town, wanting to let this world be connected to the blood river forever. This was different from the sattva sword technique he performed. The sattva sword technique borrowed the entropy of countless parallel universes' birth and death, and possessed a destructive prowess that was hard to calculate even in theory. It was an attacking prowess that could not be recorded even if every molecule on Earth was filled with one. Initially, he had thought that he had not been able to unleash his full power after being ambushed, and had hidden himself in preparation for a second attack. "I don't need it," Feng Xingjian said calmly. At the next moment, a myriad of sword light pierced through every single curled up dimension inside and outside of Riacious's body, killing it completely. Not even a hint of its will or power was left behind. The entire process was simultaneously infused with time acceleration, spatial compression, high-dimensional attacks, and the propulsion of a martial will at 90,000 points. Debris was unable to resist at all. However, at the next moment, a hand reached out from the layers of shattered space and grabbed Riacious. Chapter 11:18. With Ulpian's assistance, Feng Xingjian spent 3 days scanning through the entire northern continent with his high-dimensional sensory abilities. Although it was just a rough scan, as long as it was in existence at the divine level or above, he would be able to see through all of them. He then flipped through the history of the Holy See of Truth and asked the saints and bishops. However, there was still not much information regarding Feng Yueru. "My mother has indeed come to the church in the past, and even met the Pope once. And my appearance is also very similar to the Pope." It was a pity that this was the most information he had. What relationship did Feng Yueru have with the previous Pope? Where did that mysterious man in black come from? And why did he bestow Feng Xingjian with his talent and draw out his lifespan were still unsolved mysteries. Feng Xingjian then thought of how the man in black had taken away Feng Yueru's corpse and asked him to come to the church to look for him. However, there were no traces of him now. There were also the remaining 8 sections of the White Emperor Zenith sword. Now, that Feng Xingjian thought about it. All these secrets seemed to be related to the previous pope. It was a pity that the other party had already gone missing. Otherwise, as long as he could find the previous pope, many of the secrets would naturally be solved. However, Feng Xingjian was not discouraged despite not being able to solve these secrets. He returned to the empire's imperial capital and imparted some of his martial arts to his subordinates. He then returned to Earth and went to the Feng clan's manor, leaving behind the various technological and cultivation knowledge he had obtained. With these legacies, even if Feng Xingjian were to die in battle in the future, the influences under him would not be in too bad a state. After doing all these, Feng Xingjian arrived at the Western Seas coast. According to what the prince had said, a portion of the Western Land's sea domain and Miracle World sea domain would overlap in the next few days. Elsewhere, in the direction of the faraway Western Land, over 100 ironclad battleships sailed on the seas. Each battleship's surface was encompassed by countless runes, revealing various auras of flames, lightning, and coldness. At the bow and below the deck, countless steel cannons were ready to be fired. Many ammunitions that flashed with a golden-purple glow were piled up together, revealing an extremely dangerous aura. It was a terrifying fleet that was extremely powerful and had perfectly combined supernatural power and technology. On the flagship of the fleet, a square-faced, black-haired, and black-eyed commander dressed in a black and red military uniform stood proudly. He looked at the fleet of warships of various sizes standing on the sea with their banners blotting out the sky with a proud look on his face. Right now, in the Western continent, or the land that they called the Central Continent, the world was unified and the dynasty was flourishing. The dynasty, known as the Great Yin Dynasty, was at the pinnacle of power. The fleet in front of them was the Great Yin Dynasty's Eastern Punitive Expedition. They were here to explore the other side of the ocean, to explore the continent where countless blonde, white-skinned barbarians lived. Commander Lin Guodong looked at the fleet under his command and tapped his knuckles on the desk in front of him, secretly judging the current situation of the world. The current Great Yin Dynasty was ruled by the emperor, and he himself was the strongest divine expert under the heaven. He had an army of 800,000 soldiers under his command, and more than 50,000 Grandmaster experts. Just like Miracle World, the Western Land was filled with ether particles, and cultivation could also be done through jobs and stats window. It was just that the descriptions of the various realms were slightly different, and the emphasis and trends of the martial techniques were also different. The divine level experts in the Western Land were still referred to as divine level experts. However, conferred knight level experts were referred to as grandmasters, while knight level experts were referred to as Xiantians. Right now, the Great Yin Dynasty's emperor had conquered the 4 seas, wiped out the barbarians, and controlled the entire Western Land in his hands. He was also referred to as the Divine Emperor by the people of the 4 seas. However, Lin Guodong understood that although the Great Yin Dynasty seemed to be celebrating peace and prosperity, hidden beneath the prosperity were piles of bones and the blood and tears of countless commoners. In a situation where there were no external wars, the entire world belonged to the country's people. Therefore, the people in power would only be able to exploit their own people. Therefore, the reason why Lin Guodong was leading the Eastern Punitive Expedition to explore the barbarian continent on the other side of the ocean was so that he could excavate the riches of the other continent. He wanted to make a fortune from the war and also divert the conflicts within the country. At the thought of the riches of the other continent, endless desires and greed appeared in Lin Guodong's mind. He once again flipped through the relevant intelligence reports regarding Miracle World and read their contents. Based on the information brought back by the spies a few years ago, this Miracle World is far behind the Central Continent in terms of martial arts, politics, economy, military prowess, and things. They're just a bunch of barbarians who eat raw meat and drink blood. When the time comes, I'll have to let them have a good taste of what it means to be a great country." Lin Guodong stroked his chin and thought, but although they're barbarians, there's no lack of divine-level experts among the natives. I'll have to deal with them carefully. Just as Lin Guodong was repeatedly studying the intelligence reports regarding Miracle World, on another ship in the fleet, two sailors were resting on the deck. One of them had thick brows and big eyes, appearing to be simple and honest. "He, Senior Marshal Brother, you're really good. You're able to summon clouds and rain with a flip of your hand. This time around, the Eastern Punitive Expedition fleet has been completely wiped out, and the Imperial Court will definitely be in an uproar. That divine emperor of ours will definitely have a great drop in his prestige." The other young man, who had a feminine appearance and a thin body, said calmly, "Don't underestimate that person. If it wasn't because of his secular background, and if he were to cultivate in the higher realm like us, his achievements would probably not be what they are today. Even now, he has to rely on the combined efforts of the other sex to slowly crush the entire Great Yin." It turned out that this Eastern Punitive Expedition was secretly influenced by the sex in the higher realm. They wanted the entire army to be wiped out and shake the Imperial Court. Other than that, there were also other higher realm sects in the central continent that had made arrangements to affect the divine emperor's rule. This had always been the style of the Western land's higher realm. It was to avoid direct battles and damage to the land. Everything was done in the dark. The higher realm's immortal sects relied on their profound martial arts prowess. Many times, the dynasties in the lower realm would not even be able to discover the masterminds behind the scenes. They would then be led to disintegration or decline. This was also because the higher realm's immortal sects were unwilling to see a dynasty that was too prosperous and unified. It would be fine if such a dynasty were to last for a few years or a few decades. However, if it were to exceed a few decades or 100 years, the countless resources from the lower realm would gradually become a threat to the higher realm. Even if the threat was insignificant, it was still something that many immortal sects were unwilling to see. Moreover, in the process of disintegrating the dynasty, they would be able to earn a tremendous amount of benefits. The junior marshal brother with thick brows and big eyes said, "Hee, there's no need for us to kill all of them when we head to Miracle World this time around. We just need to make sure that they don't return. This Eastern Punitive Expedition is made up of the Imperial Court's elites, and there's no lack of divine-level experts among them. With their assistance and our martial arts, it'll be enough for us to flatten the Western land. When the time comes, we can also try heading to the outer realm and strive for Tier 7 of the divine level there." The feminine senior martial brother smiled. Although the barbarians in the Western land don't know the path to longevity, the knight's martial arts also have their merits. Don't underestimate them too much. Chapter 11:19. Of course, I won't underestimate them. The honest-looking young man grinned and said, "Over 1,000 years ago, the ascendant heavenly sect prince had personally set out for an expedition. That time around, they brought a Tier 6 divine level expert with them, but they were still defeated. Ever since then, that person has been guarding the sea. Even when the ascendant heavenly sect master personally made a move, they were unable to break through his defenses and head to Miracle World." The feminine-looking young man nodded. It's a pity that the three great immortal sects in the higher realm are always scheming against each other. Each of them has their own motives and are unable to join forces wholeheartedly. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so troublesome to break through this Miracle World. The three great immortal sects were not on good terms with each other, and there were even frequent conflicts between them in private. Therefore, no one was willing to expend great efforts to break through the Western land's defenses. Otherwise, if others were to take advantage of them, they would lose the greater good for a small gain. The many experts in the higher realm naturally knew that the Miracle World was not on the opposite side of the sea. Instead, it was in another world on another planet. It was just that there was an overlapping space between the two worlds on the sea. However, The dynasties in the lower realm, especially ordinary Xiantian and Grandmaster experts, did not know this. In their eyes, the miracle world was on the other side of the sea. The two cultivators from the higher realm were direct disciples of the Repose Palace. The feminine-looking young man was called Tang Xian, while the honest-looking young man was called Huang Shan. Both of them were Tier 6 divine level experts and top-notch characters among the disciples in the Repose Palace. This time around, they had been ordered to hide in the Eastern Expedition Fleet so that they could seize the fleet after arriving in Miracle World and gain benefits there. According to the calculations of the elders in the sect, the onslaught and the world's metamorphosis in Miracle World will only truly happen 50 years later. They don't have the method to attain longevity, and the true threat to the entire land is that guardian. Next are the people from the Holy See of Truth and the Mage Association. The divine level experts from these two influences have not experienced the world's metamorphosis, and their cultivation is inferior to ours. However, their divine arts and sorcery are all special and can challenge those of a higher level. Tang Xian analyzed, therefore, when we head over this time around, we have to hide from the Guardian surveillance. Also, we have to try our best not to make enemies with the people from the Church and the Mage Association. The other mortal countries are our targets. When the time comes, we'll be able to secretly control a few countries and harvest the various resources of the continent. Clearly, the immortal sects in the Western Land's higher realm had a very good understanding of Miracle World. They had never given up on coveting this land. However, the Holy See of Truth, the Sorcerer Association, and the existence of the Guardian made them wary. This time, they had taken advantage of the opportunity to send two disciples over. On one hand, they wanted to obtain benefits before the world changed, and, on the other hand, they wanted to test the waters. The target of their probing was to see if the new technique they had created could help the two Tier 6 divine level disciples avoid the Guardian surveillance. However, the place where the higher realms of mortal sects had miscalculated was that the time for the world's metamorphosis in Miracle World had been accelerated for some unknown reason. From the initial several decades later, a new onslaught would take place in just a few months. In fact, this acceleration had also broken the plans of many of the large factions in Miracle World, allowing Feng Xingjian and the others to complete a great reshuffle in such a short period of time. Based on our multiple probes, existences below Tier 2 of the divine level won't be discovered by the Guardian if they pass through the overlapping regions and head to the Western Land, Tang Xian said. We've tried all sorts of methods for existences above Tier 1 of the divine level, be it concealment of their cultivation, cloning, or spatial translocation. None of them can be concealed. The Guardian should have some extremely powerful insight. It was in order to deal with the other party's extremely powerful insight that this elite navy was formed. In fact, the amount of time this army had taken to prepare had far surpassed Commander Lin Guodong's imagination. Over 80% of the soldiers on the ship, which amounted to about 100,000 people, had a hint of martial will planted in them by Tang Xian and Huang Shan the year they were born. This meant that Tang Xian and Huang Shan had split their powers into 100,000 portions. During the process of these people's growth, they would grow and fuse together with them, becoming almost indistinguishable from each other. Unless Tang Xian took the initiative to retract them, they would become a part of these soldiers' bodies. This was the method the Repose Palace had thought of to avoid the Guardian. They were really unwilling to go head-on against the Guardian, who could fight evenly with the ascendant heavenly sect's sect master. This was also a test by the Repose Palace. Once they successfully avoided the surveillance, they would be able to advance in Miracle World step by step. There is even no need for Tang Xian, who was at Tier 6 of the divine level, to expose his strength. They would only need to rely on the Central Continent's superior comprehensive abilities in various aspects. Tang Xian would then be able to help the Repose Palace to gain a tremendous amount of benefits in Miracle World. 3 days later, Tang Xian looked at the sea and said, "We're here. Prepare to sleep. I hope that when we open our eyes again, will have already arrived in Miracle World. At the next moment, the bodies of the Marines that Tang Xian and Huang Shan had possessed swayed, and a hint of a daze flashed in their eyes. When they reacted at the next moment, they already had the thoughts of mortals. Tang Xian's and Huang Shan's martial what was hidden in the deepest parts of the Marines' brains. At this moment, if any divine level expert or even tier 7 or 8 divine level experts were to come over to investigate, they would only be able to sense that there were a few tier 1 divine level experts in the fleet. They would not be able to sense Tang Xian and Huang Shan, who had divided their powers into 100,000 portions. After another day, Tang Xian and Huang Shan woke up from their deep slumber. They could hear the cheers of the Navy soldiers by their ears. They exchanged a glance and then looked toward the black line in the distance. It was the coastline of Miracle World, and a hint of joy flashed in their eyes. We've succeeded. The Guardian hasn't been able to discover us either. Tang Xian's eyes lit up as he looked at the land in the distance, revealing an endless amount of greed. In a land where there were no true experts, even if he could only take action in secret, the resources he could get would far surpass what he could get from the sect. This accumulation would be sufficient for him to strive for tier 7 of the divine level when he headed to the other regions. He let out a breath, calmed his thoughts, and said, "Let's retract all of our martial will first." Miracle World. The corners of his lips curled up into a hint of a smile. "Will become our best resource." The two of them smiled at each other, and their eyes were filled with mutual understanding. Since they had successfully passed the test and arrived at a land where there were almost no opponents, how could the two of them be willing to send a tremendous amount of benefits back to the sect? In the flagship's command center, the fleet's commander, Lin Guodong, was also very excited. It was a new land filled with barbarians and endless resources. He could already imagine himself leading many experts and armored cannons to break through the barbarians' line of defense, seizing a tremendous amount of slaves, gold, and heavenly and earthly treasures. Chapter 11:20. Just then, an adjutant came to Lin Guodong's side and asked, "Sir, there's a person at the front of the fleet. He's walking on the sea and seems to be a cultivator." Cultivator? Could he be a barbarian aborigine from Miracle World? Lin Guodong's eyes lit up. Right now, he was in need of a guide to help him conquer this land. The adjutant shook his head and said, "I don't know. Although this person is walking on the sea from the direction of Miracle World, he has black hair and black eyes, similar to us." Lin Guodong stroked his beard and said, "He's probably a remnant of the central government. Bring him here." Due to the repeated attempts by the higher realms' immortal sects, there have been lost fleets, people who were fleeing, cultivators who were hiding from their enemies, and members of the royal family who had fled when dynasties were destroyed. There had been no lack of people who had fled to Miracle World from the Western Land. Lin Guodong was not surprised to see his fellow countrymen with black hair and eyes on this land. Therefore, several battleships headed toward Fang Xingjian's location. Fang Xingjian looked at the fleet before him, and his marshal instantly scanned through all the people in the fleet. 4 tier 1 divine level experts. Are they the armies of the secular dynasties in Western Land? It was very likely that it was because there was no 9-tiered heaven system for them to strive for a higher realm. Naturally, this was the case for the secular dynasties in Western Land's lower realm. Simultaneously, Fang Xingjian's gaze swept through the many cannons and ammunition on the battleships. To think that they've mobilized the power of ether particles and sealed all sorts of phenomena of high temperature, low temperature, and thunderbolts. Such a prowess is basically comparable to the battleships on Earth. With a flash in his eyes, Fang Xingjian had a rough understanding of the fleet's strength. He had been searching for the spatial overlap zone in Western Land Sea today, but he had not expected that he would be able to find a fleet from Western Land. Now that he had found them, he could take the opportunity to ask about the situation in Western Land. Looking at the ships that surrounded him, Fang Xingjian's body flashed slightly, and he appeared on the deck of one of the battleships. The surrounding Marines immediately became nervous. As they drew out their blades, over 100 Xiantian realm soldiers and over 10 Grandmaster soldiers surrounded him. Fang Xingjian didn't care about them. He looked around indifferently and asked, "Who is in charge here?" The moment he spoke in the Western continent's language. This was something that Fang Xingjian had prepared before heading to the Western continent. He had asked Prince for information on the Western continent's language. A middle-aged man with white sideburns walked up, emitting faint spiritual light from his body. This was a phenomenon of martial will manifesting. He was clearly one of the divine-level experts in this fleet. This old man is Yen Lu. "Little friend, are you from Miracle World?" "That's right." Fang Xingjian asked, "Are you the commander of this army?" "You can say that. I wonder if you can wait for a while. General Lin wants to see you. He is the true leader of this fleet." Fang Xingjian nodded and was escorted to the flagship by the fleet. Along the way, Yen Lu, a divine-level expert, followed him. Although he was accompanying him, he was actually monitoring him. However, Fang Xingjian did not care about this and followed him to the flagship's command center. Lin Guodong was seated high up in the main seat. There were also 2 divine-level experts standing next to him, including Lin Guodong and Yen Lu. The 4 divine-level experts in the fleet were all present. Seeing Fang Xingjian walk in, the 3 of them looked at him with a judging gaze. Streams of martial will were emitted, scanning through Fang Xingjian's body without any restraints. Tang Xian's eyes opened, and his martial will scanned through Fang Xingjian's position. However, he did not sense any abnormalities. After all, with Fang Xingjian's current realm, once his powers were restrained in a high-dimensional state, not everyone would be able to sense even the power of a martial art projection. To ordinary experts, the martial will and the form of the martial art projection that he had restrained were merely at the level of a conferred knight. After observing for a while, Tang Xian could also tell that Fang Xingjian's aura did not seem to belong to an ordinary person. He nodded. "This person lives in Miracle World and has our Central Continent's bloodline. I wonder what his status is like in Miracle World. If he has some authority, I can make good use of him." In the command center, Lin Guodong threw a glance at Fang Xingjian, put on an air of superiority, and said, "What is your status in Miracle World?" Simultaneously, streams of green martial will were released from his body, slowly flowing through Fang Xingjian's body. In Lin Guodong's opinion, the power of a divine-level expert and the aura of an army were sufficient for Fang Xingjian to be in fear and trepidation, and for Fang Xingjian to be honest about the situation in Miracle World. After all, there was an absolute difference between a divine-level expert and an ordinary expert. They could dictate the fate of any non-divine level expert. The other 3 divine-level experts did not say a word and looked at Fang Xingjian silently. Their gazes were filled with greed and judgment. They had decided to interrogate this man and get information about Miracle World from him. However, the scene that they had imagined did not appear. Fang Xingjian threw a glance at Lin Guodong and said, "You don't seem to understand the situation." Fang Xingjian raised his palm and tapped out across space. For streams of sword light flashed, completely suppressing the martial will of the 4 people. Violent sword force flowed through the 4 people's bodies, and their martial wills were as weak as glass when faced with this power. They were crushed layer by layer, crushing their martial wills. The 4 people's chests compressed their martial wills into a lump that was the size of a fist. Throughout the entire process, the 4 of them used up all their powers. Their eyes were wide open, their expressions savage, and their martial wills kept on exploding. However, they were unable to break through this layer of confinement. With a single attack, the 4 divine-level experts from the Western land were suppressed. Lin Guodong looked at Fang Xingjian with wide eyes. "Who on earth are you? It seems that it's not easy to communicate with you guys. It's better that I take a look myself." Fang Xingjian put out his palm, and the celestial eradication, sword technique, martial art projections palm pressed down on Lin Guodong's head. Waves of martial will were like typhoons passing by, searching wildly in Lin Guodong's consciousness. However, Tang Xian and Huang Shan opened their eyes in unison. "What a guy. To think that he's a hidden expert. Black chi flashed in Tang Xian's eyes. In that short period of time earlier, both he and Huang Shan had retracted the powers that were hidden among the many soldiers and returned to their peak condition. Sensing the martial will that kept on seething in his body like a great river, a hint of confidence flashed in Tang Xian's eyes. It had been a very long time since he had been able to control this power so freely. If it wasn't for me, this fleet might really have been defeated by you. But now, you can only blame yourself for being unlucky. Hee. I hope that this kid won't be so scared that he pees his pants later. Huang Shan also laughed out loud. They were very curious. In a world where the highest level of existence was only at Tier 1 of the divine level, what kind of interesting expressions would they have if they saw Tier 6 divine level experts like them? Chapter 11:21. However, at the next moment, the two of them felt their vision turn black, and they could no longer see anything. Amidst the endless darkness, Tang Xian and Huang Shan only felt a powerful hand grabbing onto their heads, making it impossible for them to break free. In this environment where there were no light rays or electromagnetic waves, it was as if they were in absolute darkness. It was as if even martial wills scanning could not sense any physical matter. There were only all sorts of attacks seething to and fro in the darkness. Who used sword cheese? Who performed the royal heavenly great palm imprint? Who used spatial translocation? When the darkness disappeared and light appeared once again, Tang Xian and Huang Shan's heads had already been grabbed by Fang Xingjian and pressed onto the ground. Their martial wills had dissipated, and their conjured physiques were on the verge of shattering. The effect was that their faces were covered in bruises and their bodies were covered in blood. At the beginning, Fang Xingjian had not discovered these two people. However, as they retracted the power of their martial wills, and since the celestial eradication sword technique martial art projection, Fang Xingjian saw these two Tier 6 divine level experts. Therefore, he sent down a royal heavenly great palm martial art projection. In a short exchange of blows, ferocious violence pressed down on every inch of the other party's body, completely beating Tang Xian and the other party into submission. They felt like young ladies who had been dragged into a dark alley by a burly man. By the time they regained their senses, it was as if there was no longer a piece of flesh on their bodies that belonged to them. Tang Xian said with a trembling face, "We've failed this time around. To think that the ascendant heavenly sex experts have already infiltrated Miracle World." Clearly, in a lightning-fast exchange earlier, they had treated Fang Xingjian as someone from the ascendant heavenly sect because of this royal heavenly great art martial art projection. Fang Xingjian did not mind. He looked at the two of them and said, "Tell me everything about the Western Land's current situation." The two of them exchanged a strange glance. However, Fang Xingjian was stronger than they had expected. Moreover, he only wanted information about the Western Land situation, which was not some top secret. Therefore, the two of them each condensed a stream of light spot that contained endless information about the Western Land's current situation and sent it to Fang Xingjian. After reading through the information provided by Tang Xian and Lin Guodong, and searching through the information provided by Lin Guodong, Fang Xingjian immediately gained a thorough understanding of the Western Land situation. The Great Yin dynasty was the strongest among the secular dynasties. The current emperor, Sun Xiushui, was known as the Divine Emperor and had a cultivation at Tier 1 of the divine level. In the lower realm, he was known as the #1 expert in the world and was the strongest amongst Tier 1 divine level experts. The three supreme immortal sects in the higher realm were the Ascendant Heavenly Sect, the Longevity Palace, and the Flying Celestial Sect. The sect masters of the three supreme immortal sects were 3-tier, 9 divine level experts. They were also the strongest experts in the higher realm. Their wills could be said to decide the fate of most of the lives in this world. With the help of the three immortal sects, the upper realm of the Western continent had even found a way to connect to other worlds. They could send their disciples with strength to worlds that were experiencing the heaven and earth metamorphosis to cultivate and break through the bottleneck of their strength when the Western continent was not experiencing the heaven and earth metamorphosis. The reason they had sent people to the Western continent this time around was clearly to set up pawns for the world's metamorphosis that would happen several decades later. It was a pity that they were one step behind. The world's metamorphosis in Miracle World accelerated, and Feng Xingjian, Erbian, and the others appeared. Tier 9 of the divine level. The corners of Feng Xingjian's lips curled up into a hint of a smile. He planned on clearing the hurdles for Tier 8 and 9 of the divine level together with Erbian and the others. Therefore, while Erbian and the Silver Mage King were striving for Tier 7 of the divine level, he planned on coming to the Western continent to raise his strength and then attain a breakthrough. With the high-dimensional sword realm, the Sattva sword technique, and a martial will of 90,000 points, he was really not a Tier 9 Void God expert. He even wanted to spar with these experts and see if they could help him attain a breakthrough. Therefore, Feng Xingjian subdued Tang Xian, Huang Shan, Lin Guodong, and the others and brought this fleet back to the Western continent. Streams of golden light encompassed the steel battleships, propelling them forward at a rapid speed. They headed toward the spatial overlap zone at a speed of 500 kilometers per hour, many times faster than when they had left. After arriving at the spatial overlap zone, Feng Xingjian stopped all the steel battleships. From Tang Xian and the others' memories, he had not only obtained the relevant information regarding the Western continent, but also information regarding Miracle World. Among them, the guardian who guarded the Miracle World attracted his interest. Could it be that person? Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed. At the next moment, streams of sword cheese soared into the sky, and a terrifying power gushed out with an overwhelming force, causing great waves on the surface of the sea. Large waves of 5 to 6 meters tall struck the battleships, causing countless battleships to move up and down, causing the Navy's soldiers to gasp in astonishment. Under the impact of the sword cheese, the layers of clouds in the sky were pushed aside, revealing the endless outer space. Under this astonishing pressure, the instinctive fear of humans was evoked in countless Marines, causing them to kneel down on the ground, unable to say a word. Next to Feng Xingjian, Tang Xian and Huang Shan said in surprise, "Are you crazy? The Guardian will be alerted." If the Guardian was alerted, the others might be fine, but the two of them might very well die. They had wanted to request Feng Xingjian to let them split up their powers and avoid the surveillance. However, Feng Xingjian had barged into the overlapping zone and unleashed his powers without any restraints. This was a direct provocation toward the Guardian. "It's over, it's over." Tang Xian looked in the direction of the sky in a daze. "Why did I encounter a lunatic like you?" Huang Shan also looked in the direction of the sky while trembling in fear. The Guardian who protected the Western continent was a great expert who was comparable to the ascendant heavenly sect master. If he were to provoke him like this, wouldn't he be doomed? Just then, the entire world instantly came to a stop, regardless of whether it was the white clouds in the sky, the waves on the surface of the sea, or the heartbeats and breathing of the Navy soldiers. Time had stopped. Time had stopped, but it was not just the Silver Mage King who had stopped all matter. At the ends of the space that Feng Xingjian could sense, the entire Miracle World had come to a stop. It is not that the matter is still, but that a segment of time that is unique to him has been inserted outside of the timeline, where we are right now. My high-dimensional senses have sensed the unique timeline, so I can sense the process when the segment of time is woven and inserted. Is this the ability of a Tier 8 divine level expert to stop time? And now, I've also learned it. Feng Xingjian looked at the light figure that was stepping down from the sky with a burning gaze. Countless photons appeared in his vision and then formed a human figure that appeared next to him. When Feng Xingjian saw the other party's face, a hint of understanding appeared on his face. Chapter 11:22. The human figure formed from countless photons had a thin figure and delicate features. However, The most unique thing was that his appearance was 70 to 80% similar to Feng Xingjian's. Watching as the man, who was completely formed from layers of white light, took another form, turning into a young man with black hair, brown eyes, and white robes, Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed, and he said each word clearly. The holy see of truth's previous pope, Yuri-Thai, who was formed from light, looked at Feng Xingjian. The emotions in his gaze seemed to be extremely complicated. In this period of time that was independent of the timeline, in this stagnant time, Feng Xingjian did not have to worry about his secret being leaked. He stared at Yuri-Thai and said, "What is the relationship between the two of us? And my mother, why did she die so early?" With her Tier 1 divine level cultivation back then, it was impossible for anyone to deal her with serious injuries regardless of whether it was in Miracle World or on Earth. Feng Xingjian's gaze was fixed on Yuri-Thai. He had too many questions that he wanted to ask Yuri-Thai. However, Yuri-Thai shook his head, and the gaze in his eyes started to turn blurry. Simultaneously, he did not answer Feng Xingjian's question and instead started to narrate a piece of history. 1,000 years ago, the Western Land's ascendant heavenly sect sent out the Quanji 7 people to wreak havoc in Miracle World. If it wasn't because the world's metamorphosis happened to be in the midst of a calamity, if it wasn't because the 3 great immortal sects were wary of each other and the ascendant heavenly sect master didn't take action personally, the entire world would have been taken over by the Western Land's higher realm, Yuri-Thai said calmly. Therefore, 1,000 years ago, after sealing the prince, the top-notch characters, including Saint Adam, the formidable divine king, and the current pope, thought of a solution together. They relied on the white Emperor Zenith sword's 8 sections, and then the current pope channeled his will into it. With the white Emperor Zenith sword and the powers of several top-notch sorcery and divine arts, they gained a battle prowess that was comparable to a Tier 9 divine level expert. Hearing Yuri-Thai's words, a thought flashed past Feng Xingjian's mind, and a guess rose in his mind. You're right. Yuri-Thai seemed to be able to see through what Feng Xingjian was thinking. He said calmly, from then on, in order to continue this Tier 9 divine level power, to prevent the Western Land's invasion, and to protect Miracle World without the world's metamorphosis, each generation's pope will replace the previous generation's pope and merge into the white Emperor Zenith sword after they step down. Is that so? A hint of sorrow flashed in Feng Xingjian's eyes as he looked at Yuri-Thai. A top-notch character in the world had sacrificed himself in order to protect the weak. Feng Xingjian was unable to tell if this was right or wrong. Feng Xingjian asked again, "Why didn't you pass on the method of lifespan conversion?" Oh, he immediately understood. It had only been over 1,000 years since the 6th onslaught. It could be said that there was only a small group of people who had survived through the world's metamorphosis and had surpassed here one of the divine level experts through the lifespan conversion technique. After thinking for a while, Feng Xingjian said, "So, to prevent these people from affecting the future development of the mainland, you sent them to other worlds, right? And you even sent them to the Western Land to infiltrate into the higher realm?" One could imagine that under the circumstances where the world's metamorphosis had not occurred, once those experts at Tier 2, 3, or even 6 of the divine level or above had gotten their hands on a method of lifespan conversion, all the other experts in Miracle World would only be ruled over and enslaved. Moreover, with a great enemy like the Western Land right before them, how could they allow such internal strife? Therefore, the past popes were in charge of protecting Miracle World. Meanwhile, Saint Adam, the formidable divine king, and the other experts from 1,000 years ago had probably infiltrated the Western Land secretly, infiltrating toward the higher realm's upper echelon. It's just that there's still one thing I don't understand, Feng Xingjian said as he looked at the previous pope. Why didn't the past pope survive? Yuri-Thai said, "This is the price to pay for taking a shortcut. The White Emperor Zenith sword and the powers of Tier 9 of the divine level are very strong, but they also carry a great burden. It's because there are powers that don't belong to me, and they also prevent me from continuing to cultivate. This leads to the people who have fused with them being unable to use the lifespan conversion technique to attain immortality. Fang Xingjian nodded, finally understanding what was going on. However, the sharpness in his gaze did not decrease in the slightest, and the gaze he used to look at Eurythai also became even more awe-inspiring. I already know all these. Now, tell me, what on earth is going on with me, you and my mother? Fang Xingjian said coldly. Simultaneously, streams of sword cheese kept on rising around him, encompassing toward Eurythai in an overwhelming manner. It was as if Fang Xingjian was going to make a move at the slightest disagreement. Eurythai looked at Fang Xingjian with an even more complicated gaze. Child, you, me, and your mother. We don't come from Miracle World or Earth. You and your mother are actually not members of the Fang clan. Fang Xingjian's brows raised. Although he felt surprised, he had guessed this a long time ago. Right now, he did not have any doubts and merely listened quietly. Our bloodline comes from a supreme existence in the multivariate universe, Eurythai said slowly. Eurythai slowly revealed the secrets that he knew. According to what I know, someone stole that person's bloodline and then combined it with various other superior life forms, creating a batch of androids or clones. Fang Xingjian's gaze narrowed slightly as he said, that supreme existence you're talking about, could it be the silver demonic god from the 13 demonic gods? Through the narration of the evil god tribe's warrior, Urbian, and that giant Perosis from the previous world, Fang Xingjian knew that his appearance was very similar to the human form of that legendary demonic god. The evil god tribe's warrior had even mistaken him for him before. However, hearing this, Eurythai shook his head. It's possible, but I can't be sure. The silver demonic god, even though it's a few of his parallel universe's counterparts, they also have extremely strong powers in the multivariate universe. Moreover, other than silver, white and black of the 13 demonic gods also have similar clones. Therefore, who knows? At the mention of this, a hint of mockery flashed in Eurythai's gaze. It was as if he was mocking his own background and bloodline. You're saying that my mother and I aren't mother and son, but sister and brother? Fang Xingjian said with a frown. That's right. You, me, and Fang Yueru. Half of our bloodline comes from a human who looks similar to the silver demonic god, or perhaps the silver demonic god. However, the other half of our bloodline is different, Eurythai said with a sigh. Eurythai sighed and said, existences like us are hated and coveted by countless people across the multivariate universe. Therefore, if there's no need, it's best that you don't casually reveal the origins of your bloodline in the future. Chapter 11:23. Fang Xingjian exhaled slowly, his thoughts suddenly a little chaotic. Then why do you know all these? You still retain your memories from before you came to Miracle World? Eurythai threw a glance at him and said, that's right. Before I came to this world, I was very weak. My body and were in a similar state to an ordinary 5-year-old, but I still retain some of my memories. Over 100 years after I came to this world, Fang Yueru was sent over. Back then, she was about a few months old. I secretly sent her to the Fang clan and handed her over to them for adoption. Back then, Li Shuanghua and her husband did not have any children, and Fang Yueru was not too bad. Earth's cultural background was more beneficial to her future cultivation and also helped her avoid the covetous eyes of many people. The facts have proven that my choice was correct. The corners of Eurythai's lips curled up into a hint of a smile, seemingly containing a hint of gentleness. She's grown up very well, Fang Xingjian said. Then was I sent over? And who sent us over? Do you still remember your memories from before you came to Miracle World? That's right, Eurythai said. But back then, both my abilities and were very weak. They were about the standard of an ordinary 5-year-old. I only remember that there was an extremely intense battle and a huge explosion. After that, I was sent to this world. Then it was Fang Yueru, and finally it was you. Eurythai looked at Fang Xingjian and said, you were only sent over 10 years after Fang Yueru was sent here. After meeting you, Fang Yueru hoped that you'd have a normal childhood. Therefore, she decided to personally take care of you as you grew up. Therefore, she brought you back to the Fong clan. Who was the person who sent you and me over? I don't know. Urethai gave it some thought. Suddenly, light and shadow flashed before him, and a black-robed man appeared before the two of them. But when he sent you and Fong Yueru over, he looked like this. Fong Xingjian would never be able to forget this black-robed man. He was the man who had bestowed his talent, reaped his lifespan, and even taken away Fong Yueru's corpse. My mother, how on earth did Fong Yueru die? Fong Xingjian asked. Also, do you know that this black-robed man took away Fong Yueru's corpse? Oh, did he do something like that? Urethai frowned, as if he had not expected such a thing to happen. He then shook his head and said, It's true that Fong Yueru was accidentally killed by Li Shuanghua. However, according to my investigations, before Li Shuanghua attacked her, she was already seriously injured. That was the true cause of her death. Then why didn't you avenge him? Aren't the two of you siblings? Fong Xingjian stared into Urethai's eyes, suppressing his fury. She won't let me touch the Fong family. A hint of grief flashed in Urethai's eyes. Until her death, she didn't bear any grudges against anyone, nor did she ask me to seek vengeance from anyone. Her only wish was for you to grow up peacefully and never participate in those battles and vendettas. But I know you're not that kind of person. Urethai turned to look at Fong Xingjian and said, Your talent and bloodline have destined you to not be an ordinary person. It's just as I thought. As long as you're given a safe childhood, your talent won't be buried. Right now, Fong Xingjian, inherit my powers and help me lead the church. I don't have much lifespan left. Only you can protect this world from the great calamity that will come in the future. Fong Xingjian, as long as you inherit my powers, you'll immediately possess the battle prowess of a Tier 9 divine level expert, possessing powers that surpass your imagination. You'll be able to protect your family and friends from the great calamity. Fong Xingjian did not say anything, but there seemed to be two streams of faint sword light flashing in his eyes. The black-robed man was clearly a crucial part of their bloodline. Not only had he saved them and brought them to this world, but he had even taken away Fong Yueru's corpse after her death. There was also his talent. Logically speaking, his talent contained at least two superior existences in the multivariate universe and should be very powerful. Even if Li Shuanghua were to intentionally suppress it, it should not be possible for her to do so, unless the two types of bloodlines that I contain are in conflict with each other. Fong Xingjian frowned. What that black-robed man did might not have been to increase my talent, but to eliminate the conflict in my bloodline. Fong Xingjian had uncovered many secrets from Urethai, but he had also obtained even more secrets. His background, his bloodline, and the black-robed man. Everything was so confusing. The black-robed man asked me to look for him at the church, but I searched through the entire church but couldn't find him. What was his goal? Or could it be that the current situation has also deviated from his original calculations? Just as Fong Xingjian was deep in his thoughts, Urethai frowned and said in astonishment, The world's metamorphosis. That's not right. There should still be another 50 years before it starts. Why is it sped up? Clearly, he would usually be in a state of deep sleep when he was monitoring the overlapping regions. Unless an expert at Tier 1 of the divine level or above attempted to cross the boundary, he would not wake up. Therefore, if you want to protect this world, you'll have the chance very soon. There's still 4 months before the 7th onslaught starts. Fong Xingjian threw a glance at Urethai and said, It's just that the current miracle world is no longer the one you know. Urethai removed the time halt. You need to take a good look at the situation in Miracle World. Therefore, the wind and clouds moved once again, and the seawater rose and fell once again. All the sailors, warriors, and generals came back to life. Urethai's martial will extended out rapidly in all directions, and there seemed to be countless light and shadows flowing in his eyes. He drew out the information from ether particles and saw the countless changes that had taken place in Miracle World over the past few years. On the other hand, Fang Xingjian had yet to decide if he should get Eurethai to break away from White's control together with him. After all, Eurethai was the Pope of the Holy See of Truth. This was also the first time they had met, and everything that he had said needed to be verified. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian temporarily gave up on the idea of joining forces with Eurethai. It was not a bad idea to let him guard the border between the Western Land and Miracle World. However, there were still many details that Fang Xingjian wanted to discuss with Eurethai. Moreover, Eurethai was an expert with the battle prowess of a Tier 9 divine level expert, so it was impossible for Fang Xingjian to leave him be. Therefore, as he watched Eurethai read the information, Fang Xingjian sent down a royal heavenly great art martial art projection. Then the celestial eradication sword technique martial art projection prepared to control the fleet to leave. However, the moment he left, he was stopped by Eurethai. "You want to head to the Western Land?" Eurethai frowned and said, "It's too dangerous. I'm not the only one who's monitoring the entrance and exit between the two worlds. The 3 great immortal sects in the Western Land are also doing so. That place isn't Miracle World. Regardless of whether it's in terms of cultivation legacies or the number of experts, they far surpass this place. Even I'm only making use of the wariness between level 9 experts to protect Miracle World. The moment you head over, you'll be discovered immediately. By then, even I won't be able to save you." Chapter 1124. Tier 9 of the divine level from the 3 great immortal sects? I happen to be thinking of sparring with them. Fang Xingjian smiled, looked at Eurethai, and said, "You've been fighting against them all these years." Eurethai shook his head. "In the beginning, there was basically a small battle every 3 days and a major battle every 10 days. When I became increasingly familiar with Tier 9 of the divine level's powers, they basically stopped probing me. I've fought against the Ascendant Heavenly Sect's Heavenly Emperor, the Longevity Palace's Immortal Yuqing, and the Flying Celestial Sect's Venerable Master Zhai Xing. Thankfully, they're taking care of each other and are also afraid that I'll risk my life to attack their Western Land and massacre the lower realm. Therefore, they've restrained themselves when fighting against each other and have never joined forces to attack me." Many scenes flashed in Eurethai's eyes, and his mind was filled with the battles that had happened over the past 10 years or so. The 3 of them are all at Tier 9 of the divine level and are characters who have reached the pinnacle of martial arts. The Ascendant Heavenly Sect respects strength, and the Heavenly Emperor's martial will is probably the strongest in the world. When he performs the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint at full power, even I would have to avoid it temporarily, even if I were to bring along the White Emperor Zenith Sword. The Immortal Yuqing is knowledgeable and knows all the martial arts in the world. He's able to pick up any martial arts at a glance and master them the moment he learns them. Even ordinary martial arts can shine brilliantly in his hands. To be honest, during the few times I fought against him, he had already learned a large portion of my martial arts. If it wasn't because the Church's legacy is deep and each of my supreme martial arts are extensive and profound, with almost no flaws, I'd have lost to him a long time ago. There's also Venerable Master Zhai Xing. This person is the most unfathomable out of the 3 of them, Eurethai said with a sigh. He's probably lived for over 10,000 years. Even the Western Land's history records don't know which year he was born. He's a person who can really be said to be a living fossil. No one knows his real name, his limits, or how long he's lived. Do you know how terrifying this is? The lifespan conversion art also uses strength and lifespan to convert. For him to be able to live for so many years and still maintain his Tier 9 divine level strength without regressing, it means that his strength has been improving all these years. He's probably the person who is the closest to the pinnacle of Tier 9 of the divine level. Eurethai gave a simple introduction of the 3 top-notch experts in the Western Land. He then looked at Fang Xingjian and said, "So, do you understand now? The waters in the Western Land were too deep. Before one had the power of a Tier 9 divine level expert, one should not interfere casually. Also, it's too late for you to go over now. Before Adam and the others went over, the three great immortal sects didn't strictly monitor the entrances. But ever since the infiltration plan was exposed more than 100 years ago, the entrances and exits have been strictly monitored. Even if you want to pass through, Eurethai turned to look at the Great Yan's fleet and said, "At the very least, we need to have the same level of preparation as them and hide our cultivation." However, after hearing Eurethai's introduction, Feng Xingjian did not shrink back in the slightest. Instead, his eyes gleamed with interest. "It doesn't matter. The reason why I came to the Western Land is to fight against Tier 9 Divine level experts," Feng Xingjian said. "I just hope that they won't let me down and help me make another breakthrough in martial arts." "Child, you're too arrogant." Eurethai frowned and said with some heartache, "You're not a god. Even if you've inherited my Tier 9 Divine level power, you'll only be on par with one of them. As for the current you," Eurethai's eyes narrowed, as if he could see the connection between Feng Xingjian and the surrounding space-time. "Although you've reached Tier 7 of the Divine level, this isn't enough before them. Who knows?" With a single thought, Feng Xingjian once again controlled the entire fleet to advance toward the Western Land. Eurethai sighed and was about to stop him when he saw the royal heavenly great art martial art projection take a step out and block him. "Don't stop me. I'm here to find trouble with them. I don't wish to bully you." Hearing Feng Xingjian's words, Eurethai frowned deeply. He felt that Feng Xingjian was too arrogant. The battle prowess of a Tier 9 Divine level expert was the top-notch power in this world. Who would be able to bully him? However, to Feng Xingjian, regardless of what tier of the divine level they were at, they would still be considered bullying when faced with the power of a martial will of 90,000 points each of their martial projections. Just then, streams of resplendent golden light lit up in the horizon. At the previous moment, they were still several thousand kilometers away, but at the next moment, they had already encompassed the entire stretch of sea. Countless golden figures flashed and appeared in the clouds. It was as if several tens or millions of heavenly soldiers and generals had descended into the mortal world. The gushing pressure even caused the entire stretch of sea surface to become still, like the surface of a mirror. At the sight of this scene, Eurethai's eyes widened. "It's the ascendant heavenly sect master, the heavenly emperor. Why has he come?" As he spoke, 8 streams of light suddenly lit up on his body. They were the 8 sections of the white emperor zenith sword. Streams of white light encompassed him and Feng Xingjian, and invisible powers clashed against the heavenly emperor's powers in midair, sending out streams of plasma light and distorted space. Eurethai said with a grim countenance, "His cultivation has improved again. When the battle starts, you must stay here and not go out. Once we fight at full power, I won't have any excess energy to protect you." As he spoke, the spatial distortions around Feng Xingjian became increasingly severe. He could no longer see the scene in the distance clearly, as if he had been separated from another space. Eurethai thought, "Damn it. Of all times, it has to be now. Feng Xingjian mustn't die." The two of them were both experts of the same realm. Once they started fighting, they would be evenly matched. However, Eurethai now had to protect Feng Xingjian, and he immediately had many restrictions in the battle. If the Heavenly Emperor were to focus on attacking Feng Xingjian, Eurethai would also be restricted. The golden clouds in the sky slowly opened up, and a human figure covered entirely in golden armor walked out slowly. However, compared to the domineering prestige and sovereign's aura emitted from the surrounding golden clouds and layers of golden armor, this human figure emitted a sense of benevolence. It was a great benevolence that treated the world, the sun, the moon, and all the people in the world as his own children. This was the first time Feng Xingjian had seen such a disposition of the father of the world and the mother of the sun and moon. However, he could already sense that it was very profound and unfathomable. From this, it could be seen that the other party's realm was much higher than that of the prince's. At the next moment, the heavenly emperor spoke slowly. As he opened his mouth, the wind and clouds immediately surged, and the world fell silent. All the sounds in the world seemed to have disappeared at this moment. This was the case even for the Tier 6 divine level experts Tang Xian and Huang Shan. They were unable to hear a hint of sound waves despite using all their powers. It was just like how once the Heavenly Emperor spoke, there could no longer be any other noise in the world. Chapter 1125. Mr. Urethai, how can you not invite your old friends when you're entertaining esteemed guests today? A calm voice rang out in the hearts of everyone present. Everyone felt as if their emotions had calmed down, as if they were being consoled by a loving father. The weaker Navy soldiers even had the urge to pay respects to the Heavenly Emperor and serve him wholeheartedly. Tang Xian and Huang Shan were both overjoyed. The Heavenly Emperor's arrival made them feel that their lives had been saved. Urethai replied, "Heavenly Emperor, we've been minding our own business all these years. Aren't you afraid that the other two will be guests at your ascendant heavenly sect by coming to look for me today?" Ha ha! A stream of green light suddenly lit up in the world, and an unbelievably vast chi activity descended from the sky. A suave young man slowly appeared. His eyes flashed with green light, as if they contained the circulation of the universe and the life and death of the great Tao. This was a priest who contained endless profoundness. His very existence seemed to have become the materialization of the world's great Tao. Just by looking at this priest, everyone on the fleet felt as if they had been enlightened and their martial arts realm had improved. Many martial arts that were usually stuck at bottlenecks seemed to have become simple. Urethai, you're not being nice. We've known each other for so many years. Now that you've taken in a disciple to inherit your powers, why didn't you inform us? Hearing the other party's voice, Urethai's countenance turned even more grim. Immortal Yuqing. The young priest was the immortal Yuqing, who was the Longevity Palace's sect leader. If it was said that the Heavenly Emperor gave off a dignified, benevolent father and an emperor's aura that made one's body and mind naturally submit to him, then the immortal Yuqing before them gave off a mixed feeling. He was one with the heavens and the earth, as if he contained all the mysteries of the world. All cultivators could not help but admire him and want to follow him. Urethai, don't think of sowing discord between us. The Heavenly Emperor and the others have already discussed this. It's time to settle the matters in Miracle World. The immortal Yuqing let out a cold snort, and the world seemed to suddenly turn bleak. Then, under Urethai's extremely gloomy gaze, an old man walked over slowly from the surface of the sea. The old man had white hair and brows, and he had a benevolent countenance. However, there were many intersecting wrinkles on his face, and his pair of eyes gave off a feeling that he was old and weak. They could not sense any power from the old man at all. Even if Tang Xian and Huang Shan tried their best to observe and scan him, they could not sense any extraordinary powers. They could only feel that he was an ordinary person. However, no one present would think that he was an ordinary person. It was impossible for an ordinary person to cross the sea and come here. It was impossible for him to appear together with the Heavenly Emperor and immortal Yuqing. Old man Jiaxing, what do you say? Honorable immortal Yuqing's words also reveal the old man's true identity. Cough, cough. Venerable Master Jiaxing said weakly, I don't have any objections. I'll leave everything to the two of you. Senior immortal Yuqing sneered and did not say anything. However, there were three invisible powers in the world that surrounded the entire fleet, slowly suppressing Urethai's powers. Amongst the people on the ship, the ordinary Marines were only astonished by the three top-notch experts' prowess. However, the commander, Lin Guodong, and the other three divine-level experts were completely astonished by this power. As divine-level experts, they had thought that they were already at the pinnacle of this world. However, when they suddenly came into contact with Tier 9 divine-level powers, they felt as if they were ants who had seen an elephant. It was a majestic and endless martial will that they could not even see clearly. This caused them to sink into a deep astonishment. The scene before them was even more unbelievable to Tang Xian and Huang Shan. the two Tier 6 divine level elites from the higher realm. No one knew why the three great immortal sects, who had been fighting incessantly and taking care of each other, would suddenly appear together and even show signs of joining forces. The three Tier 9 divine level experts could be said to be the strongest powers that Tang Xian knew of. Right now, the three of them were joining forces. This was unprecedented. Three great immortal sects joining forces. Tang Xian's thoughts were no longer on the current situation. If the three great immortal sects joined forces, even Miracle World's guardian would be helpless. He was more concerned about the situation in the Western Land. If the three great immortal sects really join forces, then the living space of the other higher realms of mortal sects will probably become increasingly lesser. Tang Xian and Huang Shan exchanged a glance, and a hint of deep worry flashed in their eyes. Eurethai's countenance was grim as he replied coldly, "You guys want to join forces? Aren't you afraid that someone will appear to be joining forces, but secretly plot against each other? Even if you kill me, I'll drag one of them down with me." Eurethai, stop struggling. It's already a foregone conclusion that the three of us will join forces. Today, you're facing a calamity. Immortal Yuqing grinned coldly, and waves of martial will pressed out in Eurethai's direction. Right now, the three of them were joining forces, wanting to use absolute power to seal off all of Eurethai's possible escape routes. However, at the next moment, Fang Xingjian let out a cold bellow and interrupted Immortal Yuqing. "So much crap. Are you going to fight or not?" Concurrently, he made a move. The first to make a move was the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection. Golden light flashed in void space, and a pair of golden hands formed imprints, smashing out toward the spot where the trio's powers were the strongest. Seeing the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint in void space, the Heavenly Emperor's eyes lit up and his martial will was sent out. "Oh, it seems that my traitorous disciple has passed down the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint in Miracle World." As he spoke, he had already formed seals with both hands, and the same Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint slapped out fiercely. However, compared to Fang Xingjian's Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint, the Heavenly Emperor's palm imprint was crimson gold in color and flashed with golden light. There were even pictures of mountains, rivers, the sun, the moon, humans, birds, fish, and beasts on it. It was extremely exquisite. What was even more amazing was the disposition of this pair of palms. They gave off an extremely vast and broad feeling, as if they could cover the entire world with just a single hand. Moreover, as he attacked, there seemed to be the voices of countless lives ringing out in void space. Each and every action seemed to represent the will of the heavens and the will of the people, giving off a feeling as if he was being pointed at by the masses and was the enemy of all lives. They had both clashed with a single move, but even a Tier 1 divine level expert would be able to tell the difference between the two Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprints at a single glance. Seeing how Fang Xingjian attacked without any restraints, Eurethai was both surprised and infuriated. He had not expected that this guy would be so arrogant. However, it was already too late for him to stop the superluminal attack that also distorted space. By the time Eurethai sensed it, the two Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprints had already clashed fiercely. Eurethai was unable to stop it in time. He could only send out an overwhelming white wave at the instant he sensed it, sweeping out toward the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection to prevent Fang Xingjian from being killed instantly. He bellowed out in his heart, "At least hold on for one move. Damn it, UB asterisk star better not die." The difference between a Tier 9 divine level expert and a Tier 7 divine level expert was far too great. Eurethai only hoped that Fang Xingjian would be able to survive this move before he would be able to protect him once again. Chapter 11:26. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Eurethai wanted to protect Fang Xingjian's life, but the next moment, the scene before him left him dumbfounded and in disbelief. The two Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprints collided fiercely in the sky. Absolute darkness extended out in all directions at light speed from the point where the two of them collided. Waves that seemed to destroy everything in the world continued to spread out until they were fended off by immortal Yuqing and venerable Master Zhaixing. However, to everyone's surprise, the Heavenly Emperor's royal heavenly great palm imprint shattered like glass before Fang Xingjian's attack. Under the Heavenly Emperor's countenance, his royal heavenly great palm imprint was crushed into dust by Fang Xingjian, and he was struck head-on by Fang Xingjian's palm imprint. Instantly, layers of stacking golden armor and golden palaces appeared in void space, blocking before the Heavenly Emperor. This was the royal heavenly great art's defensive technique known as the Heavenly Palace. It was a void divine palace condensed from the light of faith from a myriad of living beings in the world. It was impervious to all evil and isolated from yin and yang. Once it was performed, it was as if layers of heavenly courts had surrounded the Heavenly Emperor, possessing unbelievable defensive prowess. Even Tier 9 divine level experts would find it hard to break through it easily. However, right now, the Heavenly Palace was like a piece of paper before Fang Xingjian's attack. Boom, 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 boom. Amidst explosive sounds, countless palaces, buildings, and golden armors were torn apart and shattered by the huge palm imprint that descended from the sky, turning into countless golden light spots that drifted down into the sky. It was as if a huge dragon was rampaging through the streets. Amidst the world-shattering scene, the Heavenly Emperor let out a cold snort, and golden light once again burst out from his body. However, at the next moment, Fang Xingjian shattered the golden light all over his body with a single palm strike, and he plunged toward the surface of the sea. Roar! The Heavenly Emperor let out a furious bellow, and streams of golden light appeared in void space. Amidst a series of prayers and chants, the royal heavenly great palm imprint was activated once again. The huge crimson gold palm brought along an overwhelming aura, striking out toward Fang Xingjian's palm imprint like a planet. It was then smashed into smithereens once again, and he was slapped into the sea like a fly. Boom! The sea was struck by the violent impact, causing a tsunami that was hundreds of meters high to spread in all directions. The Heavenly Emperor's conjured physique was also filled with cracks from this attack. The royal robe, crown, and hair he wore, which were manifested from his martial will, were all shattered. With a furious roar, the Heavenly Emperor charged out of the seawater once again. Amidst the surging golden light, the courage seal, the heaven and earth seal, the wisdom seal, the living seal, numerous huge palm imprints appeared in the void, blotting out the sky and blasting towards the sky. In an instant, every inch of space in the world seemed to be filled with a powerful force. The seawater and air were evaporating on a large scale, and under the bombardment of the shock waves, even a seabed that was over 10,000 meters deep was exposed. Waves that were several kilometers high surged in all directions, but were intercepted by immortal Yuqing. Fang Xingjian, who was at the spot where the attacks were the most concentrated, was completely unperturbed. Countless golden lights bombarded his body, but it was as if a cool breeze had blown past him. He was completely unharmed. Fang Xingjian tilted his head and said with a frown, "So weak." Boom! Fang Xingjian sent out another huge palm imprint smashing out, and the myriad of golden lights were shattered. The Heavenly Emperor was also crushed across space. He charged out from the surface of the sea time and time again, only to be pushed back in time and time again. The seawater quickly decreased under the repeated attacks, revealing the ugly sediment at the seabed. Everyone watched this scene in a daze. They watched as the Heavenly Emperor resisted time and time again, but was crushed by Fang Xingjian time and time again. Regardless of whether it was the royal heavenly great palm imprint, the towering firmament palace, or the various other martial techniques, none of them were able to fend off Fang Xingjian's pure brute force. The Heavenly Emperor was no longer able to resist as he sent out palm after palm. It was as if a university student was beating up a primary school student. The Heavenly Emperor was crushed by the many palm strikes and struck down to the seabed from midair. The seawater that was over 10,000 meters high was vaporized by the duo's exchange, and everything physical within a range of 100 lis was destroyed. If it was not because immortal Yuqing's, venerable master Zhai Xing's, and Eurethai's powers were protecting this world, the duo's exchange would have long since caused great tsunamis and earthquakes in the two worlds, causing all of humanity to be wiped out. Eurethai was dumbfounded as he watched the Heavenly Emperor being smashed into dust time and time again, unable to retaliate at all. Crush. How can it be crush? A Tier 7 Divine level expert crushing a Tier 9 Divine level expert? What kind of joke is this? Eurethai was not the only one who was dumbfounded. The scene before him had also completely overturned immortal Yuqing's and venerable master Zhai Xing's worldview. Tang Xian and Huang Shan were also completely dumbfounded. B** starred. The Heavenly Emperor was once again crushed by a palm strike and plunged to the seabed, causing a great earthquake with a magnitude of over 10. After the entire seabed shattered, the Heavenly Emperor let out an enraged bellow and turned into a golden vortex. In an instant, his aura, power, and were all recovered to the pinnacle. This was the unique ability of a Tier 9 Divine level expert, time reversal. They could forever fix themselves in a pinnacle state. No matter what kind of attack they received, they would instantly return to their pinnacle state. This was also the reason why immortal Yuqing and venerable master Zhai Xing watched as the Heavenly Emperor was crushed alive. 4 Tier 9 Divine level experts. Unless they reached the end of their lifespans, the battle would never come to an end. Despite this, Fang Xingjian's power still astonished everyone. If the Heavenly Emperor was said to be having fun before the battle started, then his current feeling was as if he had encountered 5 kings in a bronze game. Faced with Fang Xingjian, he no longer underestimated him at all and went all out right from the start. Firstly, it was the time-halt ability of a Tier 8 Divine level expert. The entire world entered a standstill before the Heavenly Emperor's eyes, and an additional period of time was inserted into the timeline. At the instant the time halt was activated, immortal Yuqing, venerable master Zhai Xing, and Eurethai entered this additional period of time simultaneously. Eurethai's countenance changed, and he was about to make a move when he was stopped by immortal Yuqing and venerable master Zhai Xing. Eurethai, it's better if you spar with us first. Immortal Yuqing let out a cold snort, and a myriad of sword cheese burst out from all over his body. He used spatial translocation to appear inside and outside of Eurethai's body. Simultaneously, a portion of his attention was also focused on Fang Xingjian. Seeing that Fang Xingjian did not move at all, as if he had come to a standstill, immortal Yuqing heaved a sigh of relief for some reason. This kid's potential is far too strong. To think that he's able to surpass the Heavenly Emperor in terms of strength, even though he's only at Tier 7 of the Divine level. He must be eliminated as soon as possible, immortal Yuqing thought. Thankfully, he hasn't reached Tier 8 of the Divine level and won't be able to stop time. No matter how strong he is, he's still just an ant. Chapter 11:27. Eurethai was stopped by the two of them, and his expression was filled with anxiety. The potential that Fang Xingjian displayed made him think even more highly of him. However, he also knew that Tier 7 Divine level experts had yet to grasp time halt and would be unable to retaliate when faced with such an ability. No matter how strong their martial wills were, they would be no different from ants. He had to make good use of this opportunity to break through their blockade and bring Fang Xingjian into this additional period of time as well, recovering his mobility. It was just like how he had communicated with Fang Xingjian during the time halt earlier. At the thought of this, Eurethai's entire body burned up with white flames, and 8 light spots released piercing white light from his body. He started to release all of the White Emperor Zenith Sword's powers in his body. Although this would increase his burden and cause his lifespan to be shortened once again, at this moment he could no longer care so much. As long as he could save Fang Xingjian, everything would be worth it. Right now, I'm the only one in this world who can save him. At the thought of this, Eurythai's entire body was encompassed by white flames. The 8 sections of the white Emperor's zenith sword in his body were like 8 small suns, releasing overwhelming white light. On the other side, the Heavenly Emperor did not stop even after performing the time halt. Countless golden light appeared in void space, forming over 1,000 hand seals. 4 hands grew out from the Heavenly Emperor's back. A total of 6 hands formed seals at high speed, like a blooming lotus flower. There seemed to be countless lives crying out in void space, and phantom images of countless worlds of various sizes appeared behind the Heavenly Emperor's back. They were the countless lives in the Heavenly Emperor's divine country. Right now, all of them were using their wills and hearts to turn into seething dragon cheese, channeling into the Heavenly Emperor's body. Simultaneously, the Heavenly Emperor's 6 palms also completed forming seals, and the prayers in the surrounding void space also gradually turned into a single voice. Supreme, universe, limitless. These 3-hand seals were the ultimate secret teachings of the Royal Heavenly Great Art. It was a supreme technique that only the Ascendant Heavenly Sect Master could cultivate. It represented the strongest power that could conquer endless time and space. Right now, the Heavenly Emperor was using his martial will and the dragon chi that the millions and millions of people in the divine country had turned into to propel this ultimate technique. Just as the Supreme Seal, Universe Seal, and Infinity Seal were formed, the heaven and earth fluctuated. Everyone felt as though they were about to be expelled from this world. Every inch of space here had been compressed to an extreme by the power of the Heavenly Emperor's 3 seals. It's over. Looking at the still, unmoving Feng Xingjian, a hint of pity flashed in the Heavenly Emperor's eyes. The 3 great hand imprints stacked together, turning into an apocalyptic power that symbolized the conquest of endless time and endless space. The Ascendant Heavenly Sect's greatest profoundness, the Ascendant Heavenly Seal, smashed out fiercely toward Feng Xingjian. The power of this Ascendant Heavenly Seal had reached an unbelievable level. It was because this was no longer the Heavenly Emperor's power alone. Instead, it had borrowed the powers of several tens of parallel universes from the past and the future. There were even several tens of thousands of timelines and parallel universes that would undergo various changes due to this attack, creating a series of chain reactions. Amidst the seething space, Immortal Yuqing, Venerable Master Zhaixing, and Eurythai were all squeezed out by waves of violent tremors. It's too fierce. At the sight of this Ascendant Heavenly Seal, Immortal Yuqing could not help but feel speechless. It had been far too long since he had seen the Heavenly Emperor go all out. Even he would not be able to take on this Ascendant Heavenly Seal head-on. Eurythai's eyes were filled with anxiety, and he turned into a stretch of burning white flames, charging left and right incessantly. However, he was firmly suppressed by Immortal Yuqing and Venerable Master Zhaixing. Eurythai, give up, Venerable Master Zhaixing said through his martial will. If the 3 of us take action together and still can't take you guys down, then we won't have the face to continue living. The 3 of them exchanged blows and communicated with each other at the speed of light, and everything happened in an instant. The Ascendant Heavenly Seal also came smashing down toward Feng Xingjian's head. Before it came into contact, a violent pressure was already transmitted over, pressing down on the space around Feng Xingjian until it sunk down. Even photons were squeezed out, and the curled-up space dimension showed signs of exploding. If it were not for Immortal Yuqing and the others' defense, the entire Western Land and Miracle World's 2 planets would probably be blasted into pieces. Even if the destructive prowess was stabilized within a range of 100 lis, it would still cause severe damage to the ecology for the next several hundred years. However, at that moment, a palm opened up slowly, grabbing onto the Ascendant Heavenly Seal that the Heavenly Emperor was smashing down explosively. It also pressed all the powers contained in the Ascendant Heavenly Seal into the palm. Fang Xingjian caught the ascendant heavenly seal with one hand and looked at the heavenly emperor with indifference. He said calmly, "That's it. What? Why are you?" The heavenly emperor looked at Fang Xingjian in great astonishment, unable to understand what was happening. At the next moment, Fang Xingjian grabbed onto the heavenly emperor's ascendant heavenly seal with one hand and smashed out a punch with the other. The layers of towering heaven's palace shattered before this punch. Then the punch struck the heavenly emperor's head, causing his brain to explode. The heavenly emperor's conjured physique was also attacked by this tremendous force, exploding into pieces with a boom. Looking at the myriad of golden light spots, Fang Xingjian said calmly, "Too weak." At this moment, Fang Xingjian finally had a deeper understanding of how strong he was. Before him, the Tier 9 Divine level Heavenly Emperor was not much stronger than ordinary Divine level experts. The Ascendant Heavenly Seal, which the Heavenly Emperor had released countless secret techniques and released together with the Ascendant Heavenly Sect's final 3 Great Hand Imprints, only had the power of 50,000 points of martial will in Fang Xingjian's opinion. For something like martial will, each point of improvement was several times more difficult and amazing than the previous points. When Fang Xingjian's martial will of 90,000 points was compared to the Heavenly Emperor's strength, the difference was like that of the clouds and mud. The difference was also an astronomical figure. Seeing that the Heavenly Emperor had once again reversed time and was reborn, Fang Xingjian swung his palm like he was swatting away a mosquito, once again dispersing the Heavenly Emperor's physique. However, injuries of this degree were meaningless to a Tier 9 Divine level expert. The Heavenly Emperor took form once again very quickly, looking at Fang Xingjian with a gaze that was filled with wariness, terror, and fury. "You, how on earth did you do it?" If what the Heavenly Emperor had felt earlier was like he had encountered 5 kings in a bronze match, then right now, he was feeling like he had discovered that his teammates were scolding each other. Fang Xingjian grabbed the Heavenly Emperor's head, and the golden light that came smashing toward him was blown away with a single breath. The Heavenly Emperor attacked crazily, but when the royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint struck both inside and outside of Fang Xingjian's body, they only caused spatial tremors and physical matter to collapse. The Heavenly Emperor did not affect Fang Xingjian at all. The Heavenly Emperor's countenance was grim as he said, "Even if I can't do anything to you, you won't be able to kill me either. It's impossible to kill a Tier 9 Divine level expert." "Oh, is that so?" As Fang Xingjian spoke, he released power from his palm, compressing the Heavenly Emperor into a light spot that was the size of a thumb. Fang Xingjian then stuffed the Heavenly Emperor into his mouth. "Stop it! How dare you!" In the distance, Immortal Yuqing and Taoist Zhaixing were still in a state of astonishment. When they saw this scene, they immediately bellowed furiously and made their moves. The entire world seemed to have turned into 2 colors, green and black. The powers of the 2 top-notch experts each took up half of the space, turning into a myriad of sword light and a black demonic claw that struck out toward Fang Xingjian. Chapter 1128. Faced with the attacks from 2 Tier 9 Divine level experts, Fang Xingjian threw them an indifferent glance. His right hand turned into a stretch of light and shadow as he struck out 2 punches concurrently, clashing fiercely against Immortal Yuqing's and Venerable Master Zhaixing's powers. There seemed to be kacha-kacha strange sounds ringing out in space. At the next moment, the spot where the powers clashed shattered abruptly, turning into an endless abyss that extended out toward Immortal Yuqing and Venerable Master Zhaixing. What? Shattered space? At the sight of this scene, the countenances of both Immortal Yuqing and Venerable Master Zhaixing changed drastically. They instantly teleported 10,000 lis away, wanting to retreat. At this moment, they were completely shocked by Fang Xingjian's absolute powers and did not dare to continue fighting against him. However, the 2 of them realized that they had retreated into a stretch of darkness. Lifting their heads, they realized that they had retreated into Fong Xingjian's mouth. To think that he compressed space unknowingly and even teleported us into his mouth. A hint of clarity flashed on Immortal Yuqing's face. Let's go all out. Old Far Jai Xing, if we don't go all out, we'll probably be sealed by him forever. Tier 9 divine level experts were close to being indestructible. Unless they had powerful abilities from a timeline, it was very hard to kill them. However, being unable to be killed did not mean that they could not be imprisoned. Sealing them for a long period of time was the most effective method to deal with them. From a certain aspect, it was even more unbearable than killing them. However, just as Immortal Yuqing finished speaking, he sensed that venerable master Jai Xing had already turned into a gush of black aura and dissipated into void space. To think that this level 9 expert, who was the most ancient and had the longest lifespan in the entire world, had only sent a clone over. As a tier 9 divine level expert, an existence that was close to being indestructible, venerable master Jai Xing still did something like this. It showed how cautious he was. At the sight of this scene, Immortal Yuqing let out an enraged bellow, and countless saber light and sword shadows appeared around him. Absolute Heaven Sword, Flying Heaven's Sword Technique, Dragon-Piercing Killing Sword, Double Heavens of Ice and Fire, Electric Venom Dragon Drill, Domineering Dao, Sword Control, Sovereign Fist, Royal Heavenly Great Palm Imprint. Countless ultimate arts were performed simultaneously by Immortal Yuqing. Among them, there was even the Ascendant Heavenly Sex Royal Heavenly Great Palm Imprint. These were all the ultimate arts that Immortal Yuqing had learned over the years. His talent was simply too good and too strong. He was able to learn any ultimate technique just by looking at it once. Earlier on, when the Heavenly Emperor performed the Ascendant Heavenly Seal before him for the first time, he already had a vague idea of what it was. In the thousands of years that he had been cultivating, how many secret arts had he practiced? How many secret techniques were there? Even he himself had lost count. He had probably cultivated more than 80% of all the martial arts in the Western land since ancient times. At this moment, when all of them were executed at the same time, it was as if several hundred suns had exploded at the same time. All sorts of sword chis, saber chis, force, and air currents interweaved in the space, entangling with each other. As they stacked on top of each other, they erupted with even more ferocious power. In the end, all of these powers interweaved together. Countless ultimate arts, concepts, understandings, and comprehensions of the world interweaved together, turning into an extremely mysterious aura. This was not a stacking of powers, nor was it pure destruction. Instead, it was an understanding of the great Tao, the world, and the world circulation. This was a hint of the great Tao aura that Immortal Yuqing had obtained after cultivating for so many years, learning so many ultimate arts, martial arts, and experiences. This hint of the great Tao aura was too vast, profound, and difficult to understand. Immortal Yuqing had wanted to delve deeper into it time and time again to understand the great Tao, but he had almost lost himself in it time and time again. In a chaotic universe, everything was too vast. There was so much information and data that it almost exceeded the scope of any living creature's understanding. Compared to the memories of humans, even Immortal Yuqing's several thousand years of memories and personality were too insignificant. Entering it suddenly was like a drop of water entering the ocean, instantly assimilated. Even Tier 9 of the divine level was unable to reverse the flow of time. It could be said that ever since he had condensed this hint of the great Tao aura, each cultivation session was a life and death challenge for Immortal Yuqing. This allowed him to improve at a rapid pace. If this hint of the great Tao aura were to be used against enemies, it would be a supreme ultimate art that could ignore all defensive means. He even treated it as a killing move to deal with the Heavenly Emperor and Venerable Master, Jai Xing. Immortal Yuqing had even used this move to kill a Tier 8 divine level expert, shocking the entire higher realm. Kid, take this. Heavenly Tao Order. A hint of the great Tao aura turned into invisible waves and gushed out toward Fong Xingjian. This was pure comprehension, pure information, and it was also a part of the world. All powers, force fields, space, and time were unable to stop this hint of aura from invading. Immortal Yuching, who had unleashed this attack, aged rapidly. Endless essence, energy, and will were depleted in this attack. After all, this was equivalent to him channeling his realm into someone else's body. Naturally, the depletion was astonishing. Immortal Yuching turned from a young man into a white-haired old man. He looked lethargic, as if he would die at any moment. He had really suffered a great deal of damage to his vitality. The old man stared in Fang Xingjian's direction. As he watched the great Tao aura enter Fang Xingjian's body, a gleam flashed in his eyes. It's done. Under Immortal Yuching's excited gaze, Fang Xingjian's figure gradually started to dissipate, gradually melting into void space like a candle. This was the result of the great Tao aura communicating with him, and all the powers throughout his body returned to the world, dissipating completely. However, just as Fang Xingjian's body was about to completely melt, the melting process stopped. It was as if time had been reversed, and his body rapidly reversed the melting process. Looking at Fang Xingjian, who had been reconstructed and was completely unscathed, Immortal Yuching's brows raised as he said in disbelief, "How did you do it?" He had clearly seen that Fang Xingjian had started to be assimilated by the great Tao. How was it possible for him to turn back? However, Fang Xingjian shook his head. It was true that he had started to be assimilated by the information in the great Tao aura earlier, and he had become a part of the world. However, this was just a projection of him after all. After being assimilated, he discarded it and sent a new projection down. It was as simple as throwing away an old sock. However, a portion of the tremendous amount of information from earlier had been stored by him. Fang Xingjian looked at Immortal Yuching, and light and sword shadows appeared around him. Countless great arts were performed in an instant. At the sight of this familiar scene, Immortal Yuching's eyes suddenly opened wide. How did you? Seeing many familiar martial arts being performed, in addition to many unfamiliar martial arts from Miracle World, Immortal Yuching also started to make his moves. In his vision, many familiar great martial arts were easily performed by Fang Xingjian. Absolute Heaven Sword, Flying Heaven Sword Technique, Dragon-Piercing Sword Technique, Dual Heavens of Ice and Fire, Electric Venomous Dragon Drill, Domineering Sword Technique, Sovereign Fist, Royal Heavenly Great Palm Imprint. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.